Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the best entitled people stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled people you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that for every thumbs up this video gets, she won't try to get anyone fired for an entire week. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen demands to read my journal. I'm a 16-year-old male whose parents are divorced and I live with both 50-50 split. Anyways, I keep a dream journal so that I can help remember my dreams. This dream journal is just an app on my phone with a password lock. My mom has always gone through my phone and such, but I never had a problem with this as I either don't have anything to hide or I'm easily able to hide it as she isn't very techy. However, one day she went through my phone and tried opening my dream journal and almost blew up when she saw that it asked her for a password. She said I was sneaking around and trying to undermine her. When I told her it was a dream journal, she finally calmed down a bit and asked me to open it up, to which I said no. I feel that what goes on during my dreams, especially because I am not always in control of what happens, that I have the right to keep that to myself. My mom, however, disagreed and took my phone and went to my girlfriend's house to try and get my phone's password from her. She wouldn't budge. Huge shout out to my girlfriend. However, her parents, who I respect and have always kinda looked up to, told me that I was being very mischievous because I wouldn't unlock the journal. When I went to my dad's the next day, I asked him about it, and he told me that I should just let her see it, which was what really made me think I might be the unreasonable one. This is because if there was something my mom was doing wrong, he would jump at the opportunity to talk about her. When I came back to my mom's house a few days later, she acted normal and gave me my phone back, which was very surprising for her. Then, again later in the week, when I thought that it was all over and I don't have to think about it anymore, my mom marches in my room and grabs my phone right out of my hands and goes to my journal and unlocks it. I still have no idea how she got my password. The only thing I can think of is one of my brothers ratted me out. In the heat of the moment, my brain thought that the only way to stop her from seeing everything would be to grab the phone and delete the app as fast as possible. This was actually most likely true as I have no idea how to change the password on it, and my brothers would have probably taken my phone before I could do it. I did this fairly easily and before she could call my brothers to help her stop me. She was obviously really upset about me deleting the app and grounded me and all of that. However, the thing that was the worst was when she posted on Facebook about what I had done and all of the people commenting were siding with her. That journal really did mean a lot to me, and I feel like what I did was spiteful as I doubt anything would have come from her looking at it. I just need some people to tell me what they think, good or bad. Update. My attempts to regain my journal have been fruitless. However, I did email the devs to see if they maybe kept the data for X amount of days. Still waiting to hear back. Update 2. Wow, this post blew up. Thank you to everyone for your feedback. I've read every comment until a couple of hours ago. I just woke up from about 2 hours of sleep, and in that time I gained 1,000 comments and 10,000 upvotes. Thank you. Update 3. Unfortunately, the devs were not able to help me recover my journal. However, my mom did see 500 plus notifications from Reddit, though I wouldn't let her look at them and told her that she won't be allowed to access my phone for a while. She was not happy about it, but once I reminded her that no, she wasn't the one who paid for the phone, she seemed to calm down. I was the one who purchased it, and I pay my own bill every month. I don't know if she feels bad about what happened and wants to give me some privacy or what, but if she's leaving me alone, I'm happy. Have you ever had someone try to look through your phone? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
I check Reddit boy's phone every day. Gotta keep these Karens away from him.
You can't keep working from home since you go idle and chat too often. As part of the plan to return to office post-lockdown, my company has done a lot of redesignating of who can permanently work from home, who can hybrid, etc. I really wanted to work from home full-time. I hate the office with a burning passion. It's distracting, it's a long commute, there's no benefit to being there, so on and so forth. I'd just rather be at home. Well, when we thought May was going to be go back to office time, they started giving out the new designations. I got designated as in office full-time. It made no sense to me. I work on a team of 8 people, and each of us is in a different office somewhere in the country. I've literally never been to an in-person meeting or needed to do in-person work in 3 years at this company. Every single other person on my team got designated to work from home. So I brought it up with my boss and asked to work from home. When I started at this company and lived elsewhere, I got to work from home for 4 months before I moved, and the past 14 months during lockdown have been at home. So 18 out of 36 months at the company have been work from home. What I was told is that I go idle too often in chat to trust to work from home. Basically, we have a company-wide IM system that shows you as available, idle, or in a meeting. If you don't touch your keyboard for 5 minutes, you show as idle. So they've decided to use this as a measure for who is working and who isn't. The thing is, like many people in many types of jobs, I don't have crap to do for a full 8 hours every single day. The amount of work I have to do on a typical day takes 3 to 5 hours of actual attention. There simply isn't something to do all of the time. My performance numbers actually went up working from home. By all objective KPI numbers, I'm a better worker at home. In fact, if the KPIs that I don't flat out lead the team in, I come in second. There isn't work to do that I'm neglecting or procrastinating. When something comes up, I simply do it until it's done, or until I can't do anymore due to waiting on someone else, then stop. And I've done that method long enough that my work queue stays empty because I worked to get my queue down to the point where when something comes up, I can immediately address it and be done with it. But because I have other ways to spend my time in downtime instead of messing around online at my cube pretending to be working, meaning I show idle more often, I'm a worse worker apparently. I was told if it weren't for that, they would let me work at home. So I wrote a 6-line PowerShell script that virtually inputs the period key every 4 minutes that starts running every day at 8 a.m. and stops at 5 p.m. So now I literally never go idle. I do the same amount of work and still read books, watch TV, and play video games on the side, but I have a shiny green check mark next to my name all day. Because of lockdown complications, they eventually said no going back until after Labor Day. I just had a meeting with my boss, and he said over this time, they've noticed I go idle a lot less than I used to, so they're changing my designation to work from home, all because of a little icon in some software. This concludes my TED Talk on why low to middle level managers are the dumbest, most useless, do-nothing positions in all of corporate America. Edit. I do not need to be told to buy a mouse jiggler for the 30th time. I'm aware of what they are. This costs me no money and achieves the same thing. Why should I pay to achieve an effect I've already achieved for free? To all the people commenting that I'm a bad employee and obviously trying to insult me over it, I wish I could make you feel just how little I care. To all the people implying a workday isn't valid if you aren't at 100% capacity from 8 to 5, keep it up. You truly are an ideal employee. To them. Enjoy the taste of leather, bootlickers. Edit 3. Some of y'all would be very upset if I explained the concept of firefighters to you. Well, what do you think? Was it wrong of OP to do what they did or not? Please let us know.
I think it was genius. Managers can really be quite stupid at times.
If your dogs are service dogs, what tasks are they trained to do? Guest checks in last night into one room, claims to have found problems in the room and wanted to be switched. She claims that the room was all dirty and they found someone else's clothes in the room. Afternoon guy switches them to another room, but they fight with him to get a room with an outside door. They stay the night, bringing in 3 small dogs with her, despite our hotel not allowing pets. But she says that she told the guy last night that they were service dogs. I get in the morning, knowing none of this, as there is no note regarding a dog in any of the rooms. But I know there is one somewhere, because a different guest came up to complain about dog poop sitting in the hallway at night. I clean up the mess. Thankfully, it wasn't too gross or anything, but don't know where the dog was. Checkout time, 11 a.m. The housekeepers report that one room has dogs in it, multiple dogs. Naturally, 2 and 2 together, so I charge our fee to their card and call them to inform them that they have to leave because we don't allow pets.
Oh, but these are my service dogs. You have to accept them.
Well, your service dogs pooped in our hallway last night, meaning it isn't trained properly and we are allowed to exclude it. They take a while and a couple of reminders to leave, but they eventually do, coming up to the front desk for a receipt. At that point, they notice the charge which was signed for at check-in.
You can't charge me extra for my dogs. They're service animals. You need to take this charge off.
Ma'am, as I said before, a service animal has to be trained to not bark randomly and not go to the bathroom where it shouldn't.
You can't tell me how to deal with my dogs. They're service dogs.
Okay, what services do your dogs provide for you?
They run around at my feet, sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly.
That isn't a service dog. That's being a dog. They took my manager's business card and will probably call corporate, but they left. Going into the room afterward revealed that their well-trained dogs had started to tear up the edges of the carpeting, which will need to be replaced. When I showed this to my boss, charge them and put them on do not rent. Already done. Am I the jerk for yelling at my mom for cooking things I'm allergic to? Hi, basically for background, my mom, who's a baker, and I, 17, are allergic to nuts. I'm so allergic that even smelling them or being around them will cause me harm. Her too. But she disregards this fact often. Tonight, she's roasting walnuts for cookies, even though she promised previously after the last incident with pecan pie she apparently forgot she took home but needed to cook because it was a waste for it not to be eaten. She wouldn't anymore because I'm afraid of the definite health risks. Both these times I've tried to explain calmly that this isn't a good idea, but she escalates everything and it becomes a screaming match. I've taken 3 allergy pills since then and my throat is hurting already. Hurting just 10 minutes after crossing into the kitchen to get water, even though I've locked myself in my room. I told her I'm not coming out because I don't want to get a shot in my thigh anytime soon, and she says she will make me come out whenever she wants because she is the mother. I know this sounds juvenile, but we have fights all the time that all stem from her problem with control. I know she isn't forcing me to eat these baked goods, but being around them is detrimental to our health, and she just doesn't seem to care. She will end up eating the things she baked and then complain about it afterwards that she's itchy or her tongue hurts. But I get hurt by even being remotely around them. So, am I the jerk? Reasons I may be the jerk. It's her house and her rules, and I'm directly disobeying her, which is disrespectful. I also yelled at her, which put her in a bad mood, and she called me a bad person. Thank you. Edit. If you were wondering, I deleted the previous edit because it's become more than about this singular incident that I anticipated. Guys, I love my mom, and she's kind of a really messed up person, I understand that. I'm trying my best to navigate the situation in a way that works for me, and I don't need the harsh criticism coming through in my DMs. Yes, I take Benadryl when things like this happen. Yes, I also take allergy medicine. Yes, I always carry an EpiPen on me for multiple allergies. The airflow in this house is poor, and the nut dust or whatever doesn't really circulate. I'm not at as much of a risk as you guys think I am. Although I'm very grateful for your concern, please understand that I'm trying and that my mom isn't a bad person, just very misguided and selfish. Karen lets her dog chase after my horse. It's a beautiful day outside. Birds are singing, flowers are blooming. On days like these, it's an absolutely perfect day for riding. It's the first non-rainy, no plans day this week, and I've been wanting to get back in the saddle for a while now that winter is over. So me and my mom get our horses ready and head out. We live in the countryside, specifically Amish country, so horses are really common around here. My neighbor has horses. The neighbor on our other side actually sold us their horse when they moved because they couldn't take him. I even saw a lady riding down the street a couple days ago. Point is, horses are not a rare sight, and these dogs should have been used to seeing them and known better. We were heading down the road and about to pass a house with a barn opposite it when 2 dogs came sprinting from the yard behind the house. One was, I believe, a black lab, and the other a little Australian cattle dog. My mom managed to stop her horse in time and keep her calm, but I didn't have time to react before the cattle dog came biting at my horse's legs. Tinkerbell understandably panicked, which I do not blame her for, and I knew I couldn't hold on when she bolted, so I took my feet out of the stirrups and pushed myself off into the grass so I could go down of my own volition. Hit my head, landed on my shoulder. Thank God I was wearing a helmet. The headache and ache in my shoulder still haven't gone away, and I can't imagine how much worse it could have been. A lady came out of the house with her phone in her hand and half-heartedly called the dogs in. Thank goodness my horse didn't bolt down the road. She actually came back, and once I was off the ground, I took her reins and led her back next to Jetta and my mom. The lab walked back up to the driveway closer to her house, but the cattle dog was still barking at me and Tinkerbell. And I'll be honest, I was about a second away from kicking it myself if my horse didn't get to it first. My mom asked her to call her dog back, and she said,
You pretty much just have to walk past her.
completely ignoring the fact that I just went down and her dog was still going after us, barking and getting far closer to my horse than either of us were comfortable with. After she asked her to get her dog, and the woman said that she was a herding dog and that she couldn't do anything about it, calling her dog back one time, which it ignored, and then going back to her phone. The audacity of this woman to let her dog just go after my horse without doing anything to stop it because it's a herding dog, and telling us to go past the house when it's still going after my horse. A car had been coming down the road and it turned into the driveway, so the dog moved out of the way back into the yard finally. I only got back on my horse after we were far, far away, and we had a nice 4-hour ride after that incident, though I wasn't interested in going much faster than a slow walk because of my headache. While our dogs do bark at horses going by, they do not charge them, and our little border collie knows well enough not to go nipping at a horse's heels. Please, for the love of God, if you're in a rural area like this and your dogs aren't used to horses, keep them on a leash or behind a fence, be it physical or electric. Edit. For those of you saying I should report her, I'm going to contact the dog control officer for her town and see what can be done about the dog. Too many other horses on the road, and the dog's likely will get hit if she allows it to run out into the street like that. Men can't wear shorts, but skirts are okay? I'll go home and change then. This happened to my brother about 30 years ago, and he recently reminded me about it and said I could entertain strangers for possible imaginary points with it. He was working at a facility that made large waste separation machines for recycling. He worked in the electrical/controls department, which was open to the main factory floor but away from the assembly area. He never left the electrical bench, as all he did was build control panels while others installed them. In 2 years, he never went on the floor to work on the machines. There were areas with lots of welding going on, but even these were segregated to one side due to ventilation requirements. The factory floor was not climate controlled, and the first 2 years, shorts were okay as long as you didn't go into the welding area. Then someone got burned and the shorts rules got changed, but skirts were still okay. As you can guess, my brother and others wore some shorts after the change, mostly because as far as he knew, the rule hadn't been enforced. Then the day came when the owner turned on the enforcement and decided to call my brother out on it first. The gist of a 30-year-old conversation from memory went something like this. Owner, you need to go home and change. Bro, I'm not the only one wearing shorts. I'll be sending everyone wearing them home to change. Bro, are the women on the floor wearing skirts going to have to change? No, skirts are okay. Bro, okie dokie, be back in an hour. Not long before this, our grandmother decided to get really into genealogy. Like go to libraries and courthouses and graveyards for pencil rubbings into. She had traced us back to the Scottish Highlands, and after finding this out, my brother did exactly what Kirk Lazarus later warned against doing and went a little nuts, self-admittedly now, immersing himself in our newly discovered heritage. So my brother shows back up to work, proudly wearing his walking kilt. The next week, there was yet another rule added and enforced, and my brother was not very well liked among the female employees after that. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my neighbor's kid interact with my dog? I have an Australian Shepherd who loves attention and wants nothing more in life than to be spoiled rotten by every human being. And most of the time, I'm okay with that, except with a boy who's about 11 or 12 that has started making really uncomfortable comments. I walk my dog daily, and most of the time, neighbors pet her. Since lockdown, I've asked people to not pet her or get too close since social distancing is a must for me. My neighbor's kid hasn't taken this well, and every time I ask him to please respect our space, he gets mad and says things along the lines of how he would care for her better or how she loves him more. One time he even commented, and this is an actual quote,
Then just give her to me. I am better for her than you.
Again, this is a kid talking to me, an adult woman. Well, this has been going on for a while, and the comments kept happening. For the most part, I ignored it as a spoiled kid. Seen them a lot at work. That was until I heard him from my window talking to his friends about how he was planning to steal her while I was out for groceries because apparently I'm a bad owner for asking people not to pet her while I social distance. That was the end of the rope for me, and I went to my neighbors and talked with them. Both the parents were incredibly apologetic and told me they would talk with their son. And then the grandma got involved and yelled at me. According to the grandmother, I was a horrible person denying him his dream dog. And if I was a better person, I would give her to him. That someone like me couldn't possibly understand the bond of a boy and his dog. This went on for a while. This is the part I think I might be the jerk. I looked at my neighbors and basically said that I did not want their kid or anyone in their household to interact with me or my dog again. And if their son did anything to my dog, I would be contacting the police. I know he's a boy that's probably infatuated with a pet, but my dog is really important to me. She's not just my companion, she's, to a point, my lifeline. It's not the boy's fault his grandmother is, well, Karen. A part of me thinks I am in the wrong by basically telling them I'm blacklisting them, but at the same time, I think this kid has a toxic obsession with my dog. So, am I the jerk? Well, what would you do in this situation? Please let us know.
I'd file a restraining order. Something ain't right with that boy.
Am I the jerk for putting all of my hair and makeup and skincare products in lockboxes? I, female 17, have been babysitting these kids who are 5, 6, and 8 every day for almost a year. I'm not sure what their mom does, but she works with a lot of high-end hair, makeup, and skincare companies and gets a lot of free stuff. She sometimes comes home with bags of products and tells me to take whatever I want. Needless to say, I have a decently sized collection of high-end products that I used to have on display on my vanity. My sisters, who are 5, 6, 11, 13, 14, and 18, have a habit of breaking into my stuff, especially my makeup, but also other things like my shampoo and conditioner. My boss gets me nice ones at a discount, perfumes, lotions, etc., because I use nicer things in them. I told them to stop taking my stuff, but they wouldn't because sisters share. So one of my brothers, 24, came over and helped me put shelves in my closet, and I bought lock boxes for all of my stuff. My sisters are mad at me because they can't use my stuff anymore, and my mom and stepdad want me to let them use my stuff to keep the peace. My brother is on my side and said he's offering to let me move in with him and his girlfriend and their son, who's 6 months old, and I'm considering it, but I wanted to know if I was the jerk. Edit. Please stop saying my brother's only offering for me to live with him so I can turn into a free babysitter. We already talked about it, and I won't be his babysitter. He just wants to help me. How my grandpa became the owner of a gas station. My family immigrated to America in the 1880s and settled in Nebraska. We were farmers for the first 80 years or so, but back in the 1960s, my great-grandma decided she was going to sell the entire farm before she passed and simply give her sons 1/3 of the money for inheritance when she passed. She had 3 sons. In 1969, my great-grandma passed, and her 3 sons inherited the money she had earned from selling the farm. My grandpa decided he would basically let that money sit until after he retired from the military. In 1971, he deployed to Vietnam for his second and final deployment. At the end of his deployment, he returned to Nebraska and retired after 22 years of service. Now, he had an old Chevy truck at the time and was in the process of building a concrete business with the money he had gotten from his inheritance. Well, during this time, his truck engine blew up. My grandpa was busy at the time, and he didn't want to fool with the truck because he was busy. So he bought himself the engine he wanted to replace it with, which was an upgrade, and he went down to the only garage in town and asked them if they'd be willing to put the engine in the truck. They agreed on a price and told him to come back in a week or so. A week later, my grandpa comes back and picks up the truck. He admits he felt kind of like a fool for not double-checking the work, but assumed, since this was the son of his friend, that the son would do right by him. This was a small town. Well, my grandpa opens up the concrete business, and he's busy, and it comes time for his first oil change. This is about 4 months after he got the truck back. He's doing the oil change, and he notices that the engine he bought isn't the engine in his truck. It's a smaller engine. This obviously upsets him to high heaven, as my grandma liked to say. So he storms on down to the garage and talks to shop. Earl was the owner. Earl comes out and denies any wrongdoing, says he did as he was told and it shouldn't have taken him 4 months to bring the issue up. My grandpa tells Earl he needs to do what's right. Earl refuses. It's important to note this is a small town. Written contracts and so forth really isn't a thing. Your worth is your word. My grandpa tells Earl he's going to get him for this. Earl laughs and tells him to leave his shop. My grandpa goes down to the county and requests the record for who owns that gas station. Turns out it's an old family friend named Harold. My grandpa stops by Harold's house and starts inquiring about the business deal Harold has with Earl. Harold says, well, Earl rents the gas station/garage from him. My grandpa asks Harold how is everything going, and Harold confides that Earl hasn't paid his rent in 2 months. My grandpa asks, do you have a written lease with Earl? To which Harold goes, no, I sure don't. My grandpa then asks, what if I bought the gas station/garage from you? Harold isn't completely on board with the idea, but my grandpa makes a strong point. Earl isn't paying his rent. Harold doesn't seem like he has much interest in being a landlord anymore, and my grandpa has the cash to buy the place outright. Harold, sensing something is up, asks my grandpa, did Earl do something to you? You seem awfully interested in this garage. Ain't you busy with that concrete business of yours? And my grandpa fills Harold in on the story. My grandpa also mentions that he has a son, my father, who needs something to do, and he'd be happy to buy the whole building from Harold for a fair price, and what happens after that is his business. Also, it's important to note, when Harold decided to rent this business to Earl, in that deal went all the equipment and tools that Harold had acquired over the years, so those belonged to the building. Harold and my grandpa came to a number that they both agreed on. A few days later, my grandpa paid Harold in cash and full for the business. The paperwork is done, and my grandpa is now the proud owner of a gas station and mechanic shop. Now, my grandpa senses that Earl ain't going to be pleased when my grandpa fires Earl, so for extra good measure, my grandpa calls up the local sheriff, who is a high school friend, and asks the sheriff to come with him to break the news to Earl. So my grandpa and the sheriff go down to Earl's now former business, and they walk in, and before my grandpa can even say hello, Earl says, now I told you, I didn't cheat you. My grandpa smiles and says, I'm not here about my truck, I'm here to fire you. Earl, with a look of confusion on his face, asks, you can't fire me, I own this business. My grandpa shows him the title and says, I'm now the owner of this building, to which Earl fires back, but I got a deal with Harold. And the sheriff speaks up, you do? Do you have a lease? Well, no, Earl says, to which the sheriff smiles and says, in that case, you're going to need to take your stuff and leave. Earl is fuming. He grabs his toolbox and storms out. My grandpa ended up hiring the mechanic that would occasionally work on his truck at his concrete business. He had my aunt and grandma run the gas station full-time, and my dad would work there after school. We owned that garage for 25 years before my grandpa sold it to someone else. No overtime and report actual time worked. Regional manager steps on my toes. Many years ago, I was managing a company that was part of a national chain. We served customers all over the world with internet, phone, and we also had a high volume of walk-in customers on site. My regional manager made it clear to me that I was not to authorize any overtime. If a customer walked in or called in a few minutes before closing and would require an employee to work 30 to 60 minutes to service the customer and make a sale, I would allow them to come in late the next day by the 30 or 60 minutes they had worked over the night before. I balanced the time every week with no overtime and reported regular hours on payroll. We were working a bi-monthly pay period. One day when I was off, the regional manager paid a surprise visit to the site I was managing. He had a meeting with all of the employees in my absence and read them the riot act and demanded that all of them must report promptly in the morning at the start of their shift and leave in the same manner at the end of the shift, and they must report actual times on the handwritten time cards to the minute. My team reports this to me the following day and we comply. We rack up a bunch of overtime over the next 2 weeks, with those that got caught up servicing customers at the end of the day after hours. After submitting the timesheets, the regional manager calls me and goes off on me about the overtime. It went like this. Manager: what the heck is going on over there? I told you no overtime. This is unacceptable. I didn't authorize this. Me: did you visit my facility and have a meeting with my staff in my absence and demand that actual times must be reported and they have to be punctual and leave promptly? Yes, I did. Me: I've been managing this by allowing people to work late and come in late to eliminate overtime and make sales. We close at 5. We expect a sales rep to answer the phone at 4:59, work with the customer and make a sale. If a customer walks in at 4:59, we expect a sales rep to work with the customer and make a sale. This could take 15 minutes to an hour. I appreciate my staff doing this to service the customer, and we are now complying with your new rule to report actual times. You really shook up my staff on your last visit, and I cannot manage this anymore. Manager: forget we had this conversation and go back to what you were doing. Entitled mom demands I pay her hospital bills. Shortly after my 5th birthday, my dad found out that I was not biologically his. He immediately threw me and my mother out of his life, which now looking back, I can't really blame him. It would be a nightmare to raise someone who was a constant reminder of your wife cheating. Shortly after that, we moved from a mansion to a very small apartment, and my life has been absolutely lonely and horrible since then. The love that my mother had for me disappeared in an instant, and she and my half-siblings constantly blame me for being the reason for the divorce, have hated me since. I was constantly told by my own family, including my mother, that they all wish that I wasn't there and would have never been born and things like that. I try not to let my half-siblings' words get to me since they were kids as well, but it still hurts to this day. My mother married my stepdad when I was 10, and he and his kids, my step-siblings, have made it very clear that they didn't like me, and things got even worse. I was given the smallest room, no new clothes or things, and constantly ignored, if not being bullied by my family. Both my step-family and step-siblings went on great and fantastic trips and were given all of the latest gadgets and everything, while I was left behind. It actually came to the point where no one had wished me a happy birthday since I was 8 years old. I had no friends at school as well. I was that quiet kid who was always isolated and left out of everything. I, male, 27 now, managed to get a full ride to my dream school and am now financially quite secure. I now have very good friends and an amazing fiance with whom I have a 3-year-old son, and her family has adopted me as one of their own. My fiance also convinced me to go to therapy, for which I am very grateful as well, and I'm basically doing great in life and have moved past everything. Recently, my mother contacted me a few days ago, saying she needed my help, money actually, because she has cancer, and I firmly but politely refused her, saying that while I sympathize with her situation, it is not my responsibility and she should lose my number and never contact me again. I am now hounded by my stepfamily and even my half-siblings that I shouldn't refuse, and my response was pretty much the same, and I've blocked them as well. Yesterday, my mother called me from her friend's phone, this time ordering me to pay since she has sacrificed so much for me, to which I replied, "You never sacrificed anything. You gave away everything you had because you couldn't remain loyal," and hung up on her. I've blocked them all, and now I just keep receiving messages calling me a jerk, among other things, from new numbers, which I promptly block. But now occasionally I feel quite guilty. What my mother did was horrible, yes, but no one deserves to die for such things. So, Reddit, am I the jerk for refusing to pay my mother's hospital bill, even though it may lead to her demise? Well, what do you think? Should OP pay their mother's hospital bills or not? Please let us know. This is what you call karma. Mailbox revenge. This didn't start out as a quest for vengeance. We just wanted mail delivery to our house. Vengeance came as a byproduct, but it was truly delightful nonetheless. So, mailbox story time. This happened back in 1982 for the record. My family moved to a very rural area on a gravel road. No one had previously lived there, so it was a battle just getting mail delivery in the first place. My folks went several rounds with the local postmaster. He was somewhat enamored by his own power and very much a rules to the letter kind of guy. Every I must be dotted, every T crossed, and if there's so much as a semicolon out of place, you'll have to start all over again. He seemed to have made it his personal mission to make getting mail delivery to a new address as difficult as humanly possible. Ultimately, my folks managed to fill out the paperwork to his satisfaction, and he begrudgingly allowed us to put up a box and receive mail delivery at our new home. Dad was extremely careful in the placement of our box, and making absolutely certain it was the exact height, precise placement from the road, etc., to avoid annoying our local postmaster any more than we already had. There are, or at least were, very specific rules about rural mailboxes. Dad followed every single one. That first mailbox was perfect. The man who drove the road grader was as annoyed as the local postmaster, as he now had a new driveway to accommodate. We suspect that's why he had it out for our mailbox. After the road grader had demolished 3 of our mailboxes, Dad got upset. Previously, he had used the most basic design, just a post in the ground with a box on top. Now he was motivated. Dad got a hold of a 9-foot-long section of metal pipe. It's 4 inches in diameter, outer measurement, and has 3/4-inch thick walls. I have no idea what this was originally intended for, but I know how Dad used it. He dug a hole 5.5 feet deep. He welded an upside-down tripod shape, think open umbrella, to the bottom of the pole and dropped it into the 6-foot-wide hole. Each welded-on leg was about 3 feet of some kind of rebar, and there were 5 such spokes. He then dropped some huge rocks on top of the tripod shape to hold it in place. The empty spaces around the huge rocks were filled in with gravel, and he dumped sand to fill in the air gaps. Then he filled the rest of the hole in with dirt and mounted the mailbox on top of the post. 3 days after Dad installed the new mailbox, we heard the road grader coming down the road. Our house is a 1/4 mile from the road, but we heard the loud clang from inside. We also heard the yelling from inside. No one went down to look until they heard the road grader drive away. When they did, the box itself was slightly dented on one side, but it was still firmly upright and functional. 3 weeks later, we received a bill from the township for a bent grader blade. It was accompanied by a letter informing us that we had caused damage to city property because our mailbox was installed incorrectly. It would need to be moved, and we were liable for a bill of a couple $1,000s worth of repairs. Here's where it becomes bro-revenge instead of petty. Recall the fact that the local postmaster was annoyed with us over our battle to get mail delivery? Mom had made a point of each time we reinstalled the mailbox, taking photographs down to the post office and having the local postmaster sign off approval of the height, placement, etc. She had done the same with Dad's super post and had documented signed approval of the box, dated the day before the road grader had bent his blade trying to demolish the box. She submitted copies of the invoice for the grader blade and the letter stating that the damage was our fault because our mailbox was incorrectly placed to the post office. She also submitted copies of the official post office approval of the box to the township. The jerk postmaster was also quite prideful and became furious that his authority was being called into question by some podunk township. As far as he was concerned, the township wasn't questioning my parents, they were stating that his judgment was wrong. I don't know what went down between the postmaster and the township, but we received a second letter from the post office reiterating their approval of our mailbox. We also got a formal apology from the township and noticed that the road grader's contract had been terminated because he had lied about damage to city property. It was worded with a tone that said, "Please don't sue us because a contracted employee damaged your property." For the record, that post Dad installed nearly 40 years ago is still standing. We've replaced the box on top many times. That post, however, has now wrecked 2 cars and a truck in addition to that long-ago road grader. Am I the jerk for saying I'm broke as an excuse to not buy the things that I don't want? I am doing an engineering job, making a good amount of money, and I save a lot, so I'm definitely not actually broke. I sometimes act like I am, and it frustrates my boyfriend though. I'll give a few examples. A few weeks ago, I went to get some work done on my car. I called ahead, and the shop quoted me $150 for parts and labor, so I said okay and dropped off my car. Later that day, they called me and said that my car is ready to be picked up. But the job was way more complicated than expected, so the cost was actually $320. I told them that was more than we agreed on, and they were still being pushy. I just go, "Oh God, I'm so sorry, but I don't have the extra money. I called around to all the shops in town this morning and went with y'all because your original quote was the only one I could manage." The guy at the shop kinda hemmed and hawed, and I go, "Maybe you could take the parts back out. I'm really sorry, but that's way too much." He was like, No, I'll honor the original quote." So that was something I didn't feel that bad about, but my boyfriend said it made him uncomfortable to hear. Another time, we had been trying to buy a new dishwasher, and the guy at the store just kept trying to upsell us like a bunch of different things. And I was getting frustrated having to say no 3 or 4 times over, so I go, "I don't have the money for anything but the dishwasher. No extras." My boyfriend said he didn't like how I lied. It makes him feel uncomfortable to be around me when I'm lying, because then he feels brought into a lie. But the big stressor was when he said an old friend of his was inviting us to a party to celebrate opening her business. We decided to go. I enjoy parties. I didn't realize that this business was kind of a pyramid scheme. until we got there and the party wasn't just a party, but a push to get people to buy in. So I started declining stuff by being like, that's really expensive. I really didn't expect to be spending anything tonight, so it's really not in my budget. And, sorry, I really don't have $100 for that. His friends stopped trying to sell to me much, but it was a super weird vibe. It really wasn't a party where you could just hang out and talk and drink. Anyway, my boyfriend pulled me aside partway through and said I was embarrassing him in front of his friends, and he really wanted me to drop the broke act. I said okay, but I wanted to leave, and he took that as a sign I was being petty about what he had asked me, when honestly, I was just really not enjoying the not a real party. He's been kind of frustrated with me since, and when I got my last paycheck, he was like, "Oh yeah, real broke getting 10K," and I snapped at him to say to stop going on about it. Now I'm wondering if I was the jerk for using that excuse. My boyfriend thinks so. Am I the jerk for saying that I don't have the money when I honestly just don't want to pay for something? My boyfriend thinks it's uncomfortable and embarrassing and that I shouldn't do it. Well, who do you agree with? OP or their boyfriend? Please let us know.
I'd go for some malicious compliance. I don't want to buy from you because there's 100 better things I could spend my money on. Let's see how boyfriend likes that.
Millionaire X refused to cordially split finances. Several years ago, I, female, went through an abrupt divorce with my ex, also female. My ex is a heiress to a high net worth family in the publicly known range of 600 plus million US dollars. For 2 years prior to this split, she and I had been working individually and together with a money coach to help us communicate about money. The money coach was a trust fund kid in his 20s, like her, with a degree in psychology who specialized in helping young adults cope and comprehend the unique terrain of extreme inheritance and its impact on their interpersonal relationships. It's a ridiculously niche job, yes. In addition to helping us communicate across class differences, I found his guidance incredibly helpful in my personal development of financial literacy. Through his coaching and thanks to the concerned advice of mutual friends who recognized the unique financial power imbalance between us, we created a financial exit plan and safety net for us should we ever decide to break up. It was essentially an alimony agreement, since my ex didn't want me working for money while we were together. Fast forward a couple of years, and sure enough, she went on a prolonged vacation and decided she didn't want to come home anymore. We were living and working an unpaid medical residency abroad at the time. Considering she was subsidizing my entire life and residency abroad, I was not only heartbroken, I was super in love with her, but very concerned for my material stability. I booked a flight back to the States ASAP to try to salvage our relationship, and when I realized she had made up her mind, I accepted this and asked her to meet with our money coach together so we could get his support in sorting out the practical logistics of our separation and dissolution, what to do about the year-long lease in another country, not to mention our joint bank account. After one failed session, in which she claimed I was manipulative for having flown back without her permission, I had bought the plane ticket utilizing a credit card she had intentionally left in my possession and given Catch all permission to utilize. She canceled that specific credit card and refused to meet or communicate directly again. Via a mediator, I asked for the total amount we had agreed upon in our alimony agreement, and she refused. The amount was calculated to be enough for me to relocate back to the States and give me 6 months to get back on my professional income generating feet. She told the mediator she didn't want me living or working in the state we had been living in prior to our moving abroad, therefore she wouldn't be paying me out after all. I dug my feet in, naively believing she had become more rational and tried to negotiate, with no true leverage, for 6 months, after which I finally just transferred the alimony amount directly into our joint bank account and out into my own private one, tax-free. She called me a thief, but I reminded the mediator the account was joint, so this was legal. And besides, I only transferred the amount we had originally agreed upon. If she had agreed to participate in the final money coaching together, he likely would have encouraged her to close the joint account all those months ago. Instead, she spent an additional 4 months after that being pestered by petty bills from Airbnb to HBO to Lyft. I also paid for my therapist on her tab. My digital bills kept being charged to her cards, and she had such poor financial literacy, it took 10 months post-breakup for her to realize that my apps were still charging her myriad of other credit cards. She eventually contacted me to ask that I remove her cards from my apps. I told her it was best for her to cancel and reissue all her various credit cards since it wasn't my problem she had such a poor awareness of her money. The financial dissolution of our relationship took almost a year to complete and cost her an extra few $1,000s in inconvenient bills when we could have handled it like adults in a couple of days. Am I the jerk for telling my mother-in-law I married her daughter and not her? My mother-in-law is a kind and funny woman, though she does have a few problems with boundaries and is a little too involved in my marriage, especially now that my wife is pregnant. My wife's family aren't well off financially, and it's the opposite with my family. My family owns a factory. I'm an engineer. My wife has a job that doesn't pay well, but she's happy with it. Every time I get my wife something nice, especially jewelry, I'd get a call from my mother-in-law complaining that she got nothing once she finds out, even if it was my wife's birthday or our wedding anniversary. Holidays and other occasions aside, she'd throw a fit about how I was treating her as less than. She always comes over, and when she notices a new piece of furniture or any other new items, she'd complain I didn't get her similar stuff. She sent a picture of a very expensive necklace that she wanted me to get for her for Mother's Day. I called her to ask about it, and she said that she had been wanting it for a while, and only I could afford it. When I told her I may not be able to get it, she replied that I already got my wife an expensive necklace on Sunday, and I can afford this one too. I didn't get her the necklace, and instead, I decided to get her some fresh flowers that I picked from my late mother's garden that I trimmed, organized myself, then put into a nice vase. We visited Sunday evening, and my mother-in-law kept smiling till it was time for gift opening. I handed her the flowers and talked about how much time and effort I made to put everything together. She was shocked and said she thought I loved and cared enough to get her something nice, just like my wife, who technically isn't even a mother yet, and she's been a mother for 32 years. I got annoyed and said that I did not appreciate her harsh response to my gift, but she argued with me and kept talking about how much she wanted that necklace and that I could afford it just like I was able to afford the one I got for my wife, but instead chose a thoughtless, crappy gift to give to her. That really upset me. I said that I married her daughter and not her. Of course I was putting my wife first, and it's crazy she thinks I'm obligated to treat her and my wife the same. My wife looked at me and was astonished. Mother-in-law replied that I was being mean and nasty to her on purpose and rubbing my financial stability in her face, treating her as if she was greedy instead of showing her appreciation. She went inside looking so upset she was almost crying. Then my wife followed her. Suddenly, everyone was staring at me. It was awkward as heck. My wife snapped in the car, telling me I was way out of line for making her mom cry on Mother's Day, and said that she will not let my attitude cause a rift between her and her mom. I asked if she agreed with her mom's demands, and she said no, but I went over the top and I shouldn't have spoken to her that way. She said I deeply hurt her mom's feelings and should apologize. I really don't want to ruin my relationship with my mother-in-law, but I'm worried that I just did. Edit. I saw a question about whether this was a cultural thing, and I don't know for sure. My wife's family comes from Venezuela, and my mother-in-law always tries to get me to learn more about the place she's originally from. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his mother-in-law? Please let us know.
Act like a Karen, you get treated like a Karen. She thinks you're some sort of a piggy bank.
I'm just here to help. Some time ago, my roommate, who was working for a high-end restaurant, told me that the workforce shortages were so bad that they were forced to close for the daytime services to focus on the nights. I was working just below full-time in another restaurant as a bartender, so I figured I could help a friend and get some karma. I met with the owners and managers and explained I was here to lend a hand. This is not my main job. I want to help for the time being. I won't be here long. I've got a trip planned in a few weeks. Don't stop looking for hires, etc. They said sure, no problem. We'll work with what we got. They were really nice and friendly until I got hired. I'll skip the part about my training because there wasn't. Not enough staff. You'll learn as you do it. No problem. I've been a busboy before. I could handle Friday nights of 350 clients all by myself at my first job, and if anything, I can simply ask questions to the rest of the staff. This restaurant only hires men for the service and the support staff. I thought at first that might be cool. It was not. Never have I met more snobby, prideful, better-than-thous, egotistical jerks. I've never been treated more like crap than those 6 weeks. I got yelled at for not bringing the correct frying pan. The correct one was wider by an inch. Getting told to work faster bringing multiple torpedoes up the stairs by a waiter who was actually waiting, arms crossed, chilling on the ramp. I got told stories of staff getting actual dishes thrown at them. The list goes on. During these weeks, I was working 6 to 7 days a week with both my jobs. The pay I was working with that side job wasn't even worth it, but I was still working hard, doing my best at every moment. I juggled shifts, took some whenever another employee needed it and I could manage, but never came in late, never quit, and never argued. I always responded with, "Yes, sir," and it was the norm. But man, was that job taking a toll on me. Good thing my vacation was coming up. I had a big vacation planned, 2 weeks on the other side of the country. Plane tickets bought, vacations cleared with my main job. When I reminded the side job about it, the manager said, "Remind me about it before I make the schedule. I'll try to see if it's possible." Yeah, I'm not asking for vacations. I'm telling you I won't be here for these 2 weeks. "Well, that just won't work. We might need you. We're short-staffed." Yeah, I know, but I'm only here to help. I told you all of this when I offered you some help. "That just won't do. If you don't take this job seriously, don't bother coming back." You're absolutely right. Thanks. I gave him my shirt, took my bags, and never came back. Best vacations of my life. Am I the jerk for asking my employees' parents to stop harassing him at work? I, 25, female, have an employee, 20-ish male. Let's call him Amir. Amir had a falling out with his parents and blocked them on his personal cell phone. Amir's parents have been calling our front desk while he's working. He will tell them that he can't take their calls at work and hangs up. They call back. If he screens their calls, they call over and over, tying up our phones. They will then call other people in the office, pretending to be a customer. They tell us that the person at the front desk is not answering the phone and is providing poor customer service so that we will go out and force Amir to answer. I talked to our IT department to see if we could block specific numbers on our phones, but was told that this wasn't an option. My boss, Amir, and I were in the process of trying to work out a solution to this mess. But before that could happen, Amir's parents came into our office and started screaming at their son. I made up some BS excuse to send Amir to the back of our office to work on a project to get him out of the situation. Once Amir had gone, his parents turned to leave. I stopped them and introduced myself as Amir's supervisor. I explained how it is our policy not to use work phones for personal calls. Also, that if they needed to discuss personal issues with their son in person, this was best done outside of the workplace. His father became angry and told me that he had every right to call his son on our phones because we are funded through tax money and he is a taxpayer. I explained that his tax dollars pay for our services, which he is welcome to use, but we cannot tie up our phones with personal family calls. His father then demanded that I force Amir to speak to them since I was his supervisor. I explained that it was not my business to get involved with the family matters of my employees. I told them that when he was on the clock, Amir was an employee and they were customers, and in this context, what they were doing was harassment. This touched a nerve, and his father blew up and started yelling in my face. He basically told me that he was going to go to the president of the organization to complain about me and get me fired. Then he and his wife stormed out. As soon as they left, a coworker came out from the back office and was livid. He told me that I didn't understand what it was like to be a parent and was angry that I told Amir's parents that they couldn't call him at work. This is literally our work policy. It applies to everyone, including myself and other coworkers. It goes way above my head. My coworker knows about Amir's parents calling him over and over at work and thinks that this is reasonable behavior given the situation. He then tells me that I should sit down with Amir and have a heart-to-heart about reconciling with his parents. I refuse, saying that Amir is an adult and it is not my place. My coworker now thinks that I'm the jerk. So, am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Amir's parents? Please let us know.
That coworker might be the biggest jerk of them all.
Apparently, I'm an undercover boss? So this was before lockdown started. I've owned and still own a few businesses around town, and due to me being an apprentice and working full-time as a carpenter as well, I usually let my friends handle them. One of my businesses is a small tennis shop and a tennis club where one of my closest friends manages it. So basically, I'm the owner who never turns up. Yes, I know, it sounds a bit dumb, but it is how it is. So my friend hired a new worker, which I've never met before, but I trust my friend's judgment. Usually he's very good, and I know basically everyone in the club as well. So after a week of holidays, which I took off for climbing and hiking with a few friends, I turned up at the tennis club to check out how it was running since I've been getting weird messages from the members of the tennis club saying they're getting ill-advised by someone. I already knew it wasn't my friend, since I've taught him everything about tennis rackets, shoes, and clothing, etc. And apparently, they're also being ripped off, which I do not like. Sure, I don't get a lot of money out of the members due to me giving discounts from time to time, but I work closely with the companies due to my father being a tennis coach and him having the connections with said firms. I run this business because I personally don't like playing tennis anymore, but I enjoy the business side, and my father is very passionate about tennis. So I arrived at the store, which is smallish, and make my way to the only office in the store until I get cut off by some tall guy who I've never seen before. I do know everyone by looks, but not by name, and everyone knows that as we usually always have a laugh, but this time I really didn't know him, so this is how the story went. Let's call the employee Brian. Me. Hello to you, sir. How can I help you? Brian. Where do you think you're going, kid? A little side note, I'm fairly young, 19 to be exact, but I started this business at 16 with my dad, and he basically gave me his share once I came of age, so yes, very young, but I've never had a complaint about it ever. I'm going to my office. Can I help you though? I told him, and asked as I didn't know if he was the new employee. He scoffs and responds with an irritated tone. Your office? Kid, that's the owner's and my office. You do not work here, and if you're not going to buy anything, get lost. I was at a loss of words due to me remembering the fact of the complaints of the customers and him being the new employee. At least I was guessing at the time. I was shocked to say the least. We, my friend and I, strive to always keep our clients happy and to be civil and kind to all of our customers, no matter who they are or how long they've played tennis for. Suddenly, the door opened though, and due to me looking at this new guy, I didn't know who it was. Ah, Mr. Wade, you're back from your break, I see. I was just about to throw this kid out. He was trying to steal and break into your office. Brian responded to the person walking in. I then turn around, seeing my wide-eyed friend with his mouth agape. He then looks at Brian angrily. That kid you were about to throw out is my friend, boss, and owner of this place. You do not kick anyone out unless there's a good reason, no matter what, he angrily said as he grabbed both me and Brian and dragged us both to the office. Mr. Wabe, or Adam as I call him, was a big guy, around 6 foot or more. Brian looked about 5'9". Definitely taller than me though, since I'm only 5'6 to 5'7 and weighed a measly 110 pounds, so dragging me around is pretty easy. So the shortcut story here is that Brian got fired by Adam, and I apologize to all of our clients due to me feeling really bad about it. I'm never coming back because you won't give me a refund without a receipt. I manage a shop, and today a customer came in wanting to return his mod. I'll call him Angry Customer. Hi, I bought this mod here and it won't charge anymore. Me. I'm sorry to hear that. Do you mind if I check it out real quick? Me. This thing looks beat to heck. It was full of dents and the tank was cracked. Okay, so your charging port has loosened itself from the board. Unfortunately, we don't do repairs, but if you have the receipt or the card you purchased it with, I can get you a refund or exchange it if it was bought within the past month. I don't have the receipt, but I have the card. Me. Runs card. It looks like the only purchase made with this card was not for this item. Could it have been another card? No, it was definitely that one. Me. Unfortunately, it's only showing one purchase and it wasn't the same item. Do you know when you purchased it? Main reason I asked is that I realized we sold the last of those mods months ago and our return window ends after 30 days. No, I don't remember. Me. Okay, well, I'm really sorry, but I can't refund or exchange anything without a receipt. And without an estimated time frame, I can't go back and manually find it. So that's it? I'm just stuck with it? Me. I'm sorry, man. It's company policy that we need proof of purchase for any returns. You can't call a manager and ask them about it? Me. I am the manager. Alright, well you just lost a customer then. Thanks, but no thanks. Me. Okay, have a nice night. Guess I'm about to lose my job and the business will go under because this guy isn't coming back. I don't know how I'm gonna sleep tonight, honestly. Karen roommate expects me to clean up after her. So I, 20 female, have been living with my current roommate, 19 female, in a 2-bedroom apartment for the past year while attending college. She and I got along well for the most part, have similar interests and split costs evenly, at least at first. After a couple of months, she was unable to pay for her share of groceries. I covered her half a couple times, being sympathetic towards her situation. However, this has since spiraled into her expecting me to pay for all of the groceries every time. I have offered to help her find a job, to which she refused. On top of this, she routinely eats all of the snacks I buy for herself. Now this, she only washes the dishes she uses when she needs them again. At this point, I've been buying all of the groceries for months and have started to buy less because I need to save money for tuition. Because of this, she cooks less and instead orders out, only for herself, which is fine but important to note. Instead of using the money she spends on takeout for groceries, so the dishes just sit there for weeks and smell awful. Yes, I could wash them myself, but between my job and schoolwork, as well as all of the other cleaning jobs around the apartment that she now refuses to do, I just can't bring myself to do yet another thing she said she would do herself. I let her know, as politely as I could, that I couldn't handle her responsibilities on top of my own and thought the issue would be resolved. I have resorted to only cleaning my own room, the shared bathroom, and the dishes I personally use, instead of cleaning the entire apartment, including her room and the living room area she spends most of her time in. Now I spend what little time I am at home locked in my room because the entire apartment is trashed. I mean, it smells disgusting, and there's now a fruit fly problem because of it. She confronted me about this, asking why I don't clean or buy enough groceries for both of us anymore, and I'm honestly fed up. I told her that she can clean up after herself and pay for her own groceries. Now she's upset with me, still refuses to pull her own weight, and claims that she is overwhelmed and depressed. I also suffer from mental illness, and I understand that they can be debilitating and that she may not be meaning to take advantage of me, but I don't think that's a valid excuse for her to walk all over me and the kindness that I've shown her. I gave her the number to the student counseling service just in case and offered to listen if she wanted to talk, but I personally feel like she's using this excuse as a cop-out to get more favors out of me. I still haven't cleaned her mess or bought more groceries, and I'm still mostly in my room, but I'm at my wit's end and cannot physically or emotionally handle this behavior anymore. Am I the jerk? What do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is there a roommate? Please let us know.
I'd get a new roommate ASAP. You're not her mom.
Entitled parents have a slight meltdown in the ER. Some background. I'm a male RN and work in the emergency room of a medium-sized hospital. I mostly work nights. In Germany, you get more money when you work night shifts because the time and night shifts are longer than normal day shifts. We work 3 different shifts. Morning from 5:30 a.m. to 2 p.m., day from 11:30 a.m. to 8 p.m., and the night shift from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. So I've got some stories. At night, the crazy stuff happens. Oh, and this happened before lockdown. So that night, I worked at the front desk. So mostly doing admission of the patients, handling their healthcare IDs. We have universal healthcare. And well, just manning the reception. This was, I think, around 1 a.m., so the ER was relatively empty. At night, there are like 3 hours when something is happening, rarely. So yeah, I sat there, sipping my 3rd cup of coffee and chatting with a fellow nurse. Then the entitled parents arrived. I didn't see them coming.
Excuse me?
There she was. A thing I only knew from the internet. A Karen. In Germany. Dang. She had the typical haircut and that "I'm better than you" vibe. In tow, she had a man. He seemed normal. Me. Oh, sorry, how can I help you? The perfect customer service smile. Karen.
Yeah. I searched my daughter. Her sister texted me that she is here. Her name is Daughter.
Me. Typing on the keyboard of the computer. Ah, yes, she's been admitted here.
Well, then what does she have? Can I see her?
Now I have to explain. We've got some privacy laws here in Germany. So if you're legally an adult, 18 and over, you have full privacy. And without your consent, I can't give anyone any information. Not the parents, not the siblings, not the significant other, not the kids. So yeah, me. Sorry, I can't give you the patient's data. That's against the law. Karen.
We are her parents, and she's our kid.
Me. She's 18, so she's an adult. Without her consent, I can't tell you anything. But I can call the doctor she is seeing and ask. Karen crosses her arms.
Fine, but make it quick.
Tapping her feet on the ground. Me, taking the internal phone from the desk and making the call. The daughter didn't want her parents there and denied them any information. That's her rightful choice. Me, I'm sorry, but your daughter denied you any information. Karen.
What?
Meltdown is about to start.
I'm her mom. Bring me to her now.
Me. Ma'am, please lower your voice. This is a hospital.
Yes, and I want to know where's my daughter. I'm her mother. She should share everything with me. Well, I don't need you to find her.
She then passes the desk and goes in the direction of the treatment rooms. Me. Hey, you can't go there. I get reinforced with another male RN and a male nursing student and block her way. All this commotion has attracted the attention of the attending ER doctor. He stormed out of his office. Our night doc is a good doc, but, well, he has a temper. Doctor, what's going on here? Karen looks smug.
Ah, good, a doctor. These men are blocking our way to see my daughter. She must be scared to be alone here, and we need to comfort her now.
Doctor, luckily not taking her crap. So, OP, her daughter? Me. Yes, she's here with Dr. XY. She's 18 and denied her visit and any information about her health. Karen.
Liar. Our daughter is 16.
Doctor. Yeah, well, listen, lady. Now he crosses his arms. I believe this guy here slightly more. If you proceed to invade this space where only patients and staff are allowed, I'll have you escorted out. You can wait in the waiting room. Husband, smug like his wife. What will you do? Have the security throw us out? Doctor. No, I will do it myself if you don't leave this instant. Karen probably sees that she has the chances of a popsicle in heck.
I will sue this hospital. I know the management.
She stomps out with her husband in tow. Doctor, if she shows up again, call security immediately. Well, lucky enough, Karen never came back that night. Am I the jerk for having an outdoor party when my neighbors had a reality TV film crew over, ruining their chance to be on TV? I live in a house that was split into 3 apartments. I've been planning a big party for months since my friends and I got the vac. It'd be a big backyard party. A few weeks ago, I told the other renters in my building that I'd be throwing a party in our shared backyard, and they were both welcome to come hang out and bring friends. They both took me up on it, and the plan for the party grew since between them, they were bringing an extra 10 or so friends. So overall, we were expecting 30 or so people over for an afternoon barbecue going into the night on Saturday. In the morning, some of my friends and the other people from my building and I started setting up my backyard, and a guy came over and asked if we could stay inside because they are filming. I said no, sorry, we have plans to have friends over, and we had to get ready. He got frustrated with us and said that their company had sent out a month's notice asking all of the neighbors to accommodate filming, and that he had heard back from everyone that it was okay. So my building mates and I were all like, we've never heard anything about filming. We really didn't know what he was talking about. I also told the guy that I do not want to be on camera, and my guests will not want to be on camera either. This wasn't just me being difficult. I and a number of my friends are in the cybersecurity industry and are actually bothered by that. He asked how many people would be over, and I said maybe 30. He said something about not being able to film at all in those conditions and having to talk to his manager. Before we heard anything back from him, a lot of our friends started coming in. Then another man came over and talked to some of my guests, but didn't end up finding me. It turns out he was the manager and was trying to ask us to be quiet and come inside for a while they filmed, and some of my friends were just like, I don't think that's gonna happen. And yeah, I think more people are coming and are not gonna fit easily inside. I didn't know he was there at the time. Me and all of my friends were way more focused on hanging out for the first time in the year. Anyway, the day later, the neighbors who owned the whole house next door came over mad at us because we ruined her family's chance of being on TV. They were going to be featured on some reality show as a family, but as soon as the producers realized that there was going to be a big party next door, with all the guests unwilling to even be caught on camera, they realized it was impossible. The show apparently didn't think it was worth the trouble to rescue after the wasted day on Saturday. She was also mad because the production company had talked to the landlord of our building, I guess, and he said stuff would be fine and that the tenants are quiet. I guess he must have just assumed we'd all be as quiet and indoors as we had been doing during 2020. Edit to add, this assumption is wrong. See the below edit about what my landlord actually said. Am I the jerk for having a party that ruined my neighbor's chance to have her family on reality TV? Edit to describe stuff with my landlord. I just asked him what was up. He got a call from a production company who said they were filming next door to his home and wanted to know if he was fine to get his property in the shot. He said yeah. They asked if he would be quiet and be accommodating of not getting in the shot. He said sure. He was out of town anyway. He didn't realize at the time, but it turns out the production company thought my apartment, which he owns, was his home because it is in his name and it looks like a house, not a rental property. And when they called asking about his home, he assumed they meant the house where he lives. The confusion happened because he lives on the same street and they referred to the street, but not an exact address. If you had the chance to be on a reality show, would you? And if so, which one? Please let us know.
I've always wanted to go on American Idol myself.
So I'm not getting the promotion you promised? Then I'm not doing the extra work. This isn't my story, but my wife's. She doesn't have a Reddit and said I could share her story with you lovely people. Allow me to set the scene. My wife, Harper's, official title is Mental Health Professional, or MHP, and she has been in this position for 3 years at a live-in care facility for adults with mental illness. Before that, she worked for several years on the mental health ward at the hospital, so she has had more experience working in her current position than anyone else they hired. Within the first year, she got 2 lifers to progress in their treatment plans so thoroughly that they both got the okay to move out into the sister program that has more freedom and independence. She was working with a 3rd lifer who was about to get ready to apply for the sister program when lockdown hit and the transfers between housing or even non-AMA releases were suspended. All this to say that she has made some very serious and positive changes for this facility from the moment that she started working there. They made her the lead MHP, and her direct supervisor's boss started giving her more responsibilities, like the morning team report for the whole facility, handling client money, making decisions on big changes to help the overall workload, etc. Her yearly review happened in December, which was promised to come with a large raise to reflect all the added responsibilities she has been gradually given. Of course, it didn't. She stayed on HR about her raise for a month or so after the review itself, until the big boss finally brought her into his office to discuss with her a promotion. It would be a bit tricky because she has her bachelor's in psych and social work, but not her master's, which we're looking on getting her back in school soon to complete, and which she needs to officially fulfill the job title they had in mind. Still, she was clearly leaps and bounds beyond her coworkers, often staying over to help clients or to finish paperwork, filling in wherever she's needed. So promoting her would be cheaper than hiring on someone new, and of course, this would come with an even better pay raise. So for the last few months, my wife has been doing even more for her supervisor's boss and the big boss. Anything they ask of her, dangling that official promotion over her head, constantly saying it would be a gradual transition and she needs to learn this or that, do this or that, to train for it. Out of her own pockets, she bought new binders and other supplies that made the various parts of her job and theirs easier. She planned, reorganized, filled in, whatever. The supervisor's boss even told her verbatim, "I don't know what I would do without your help," several times. All this with the promise of an official promotion and a raise. Then it happened. Last week, Harper was tasked with sorting through potential new hires, as they had been hurting for more MHPs for some time, and the bosses had taken some of Harper's clients off her workload to make room for the new responsibilities. She noticed that of the stack she was given, all applicants had a master's or qualifying credential in social work. Worrisome. 2 days ago, it was business as usual for most of the day until about an hour before Harper was supposed to clock out. She called me in angry tears, ranting about the conversation she had just had with her supervisor's boss. He told her that she would unfortunately be taking on more clients and the promotion would be put on hold for the time being. She said he didn't come right out and say he had decided to hire one of the people with a master's instead for the position, but what he did say was, "You'll have to relinquish any added responsibilities and return to just being an MHP." Okay, bet. After trying to calm her down, I gave my normally frustratingly accommodating wife a nudge in the malicious direction. One of the first added responsibilities she was given was the morning report. It was her job to have all of the staff gather during the client's breakfast to relay what happened during third shift, the plans for the day, coordinating client appointments, etc. She would have to be in the facility before third shift clocked out to get their notes, and then plan a traveling and gas budget for all of the appointments, review any safety concerns or incidents, and this all added about an hour to her morning. So, how happy was she the next morning when she got to snooze her alarm and sleep in a bit longer? When she got to the facility at her usual clock-in time as an MHP, She said the place was already in chaos. A fight had broken out, and someone had some money stolen out of their room. All normal events for this place, but no one was exactly sure on the who or why, because third shift had no one to pass along the notes, so they just filed them and left. Of course, Harper knew where they had been filed, because she organized the filing system no one had thought to check. As soon as Supervisor's boss saw her clock in, he asked why she wasn't there for the report. See, he's always a seemingly sweet and soft-spoken man, which made the sudden change of mind all the more surprising. Harper said she just stared him down, trying not to grin, and said, "I'm just an MHP. I can't handle the morning report." She then spent the rest of the day giving him the cold shoulder, relaying only necessary information to him while focusing on her clients and paperwork. I want to be clear. It isn't that they chose a more educated person for the higher position. That makes plenty of sense. It's that they promised her that position, spent the last few months transitioning her responsibilities to said position, promised her the pay raise to go with it, and then ripped it right out from under her. That's some underhanded BS. Oh, and since she isn't getting the promotion, she went to HR to see about her overdue yearly raise. She was told no one is getting a raise at the moment because of lockdown. Manager tries to make life difficult for me. Doesn't know, as per my contract, it benefits me. This happened a couple of years ago. I was working on a part-time basis in a small firm owned by friends. Pay was not very good, but the atmosphere was, and I was allowed to set my own timings, so life was good overall. Then a friend, whom I knew only through social media, approached me for a job in her company. Even though they were offering good money, I turned down the offer as I knew I could not get the benefits I was getting at my current job. Plus, the commute to the new office was very long. I would have to travel 2 hours one way and change 3 trains just to reach the office. A month later, the HR of the new firm approached me again. They offered me almost 4 times the money I was making, and I could set my own work hours. There was also extra pay for working overtime and on weekends. This was important. I joined the new company. My friends did not know the terms of the new agreement I had with HR. She used to act like I owed her big time for the opportunity I got. So one day I corrected her. I told her that I had turned down the offer she had been part of, and 1 month later I had had my own negotiations and I got much more favorable terms. So I was here because her company really needed me, and not because of her. I didn't share the details of my agreement with her, but we both realized that she was making significantly less than me. This totally changed her attitude towards me. Now she wanted me out, and I was determined to stick through for at least a year. So she decided that she would make it very difficult for me to work so that I quit on my own. There are a lot of stories I have about how she tried every trick in the book to make me quit. I'm sharing some of them here. She was my manager and was in charge of allocating work. Malicious compliance. 1. She started piling on work on me more than any other members of the team. I was happy to comply. She did not know that as part of my contract, I would be paid 1.5 times the hourly rate for every hour I worked OT, and 2 times the hourly rate if any work was allocated to me over weekends or holidays. Every time she tried to ruin my weekend by calling me to the office unnecessarily, I happily complied. This continued till the time I left the organization and told her how much extra money she had helped me make. Malicious compliance 2. After the long commute to work, I used to be hungry, so I developed the habit of stopping at the food court to pick up a glass of fresh juice and carry it with me to work. My manager thought that this way she could harass me without actually seeming to do so, so she sent a letter that bringing liquids to office was a hazard. Ironically, she used to have coffee delivered to her desk 3 times a day. Well, I pointed out that the rule applied to her as well, and if I couldn't have my juice, she couldn't have her coffee. She had to literally spend an extra unpaid hour at work every time she wanted her special coffee. Meanwhile, I was happy to leisurely sit in the food court, have my glass of fresh juice with some snacks, and then begin my workday half hour later than usual. You want me to tuck my shirt in? Sure, boss. Years ago, I worked at a certain big box pet store with employees in blue shirts and poorly maintained fish tanks. Back then, employees were required to tuck their uniform shirts into their khakis, with an exemption for pregnant female employees, which I was at the time of this occurrence. I worked the registers with my untucked shirt with no issues for months while I was preggo. When I was about 8 months pregnant and just a few weeks shy of going on maternity leave, we got a new manager that was painfully clueless and stupid. Isn't that always the way? So one day, this manager calls myself and the other main cashier, who was also just as preggo as I was, into the office with another manager as a witness, to tell us that we are fine cashiers, but our uniforms are lacking. The other cashier and myself are just like, what? Because we both had our khakis, uniform shirts, and black sneakers. Everything was neat and clean, so we both had no clue what he was talking about. I ask him what he's referring to. He replies that our shirts have to be tucked in. The other cashier and I have both been with the company for a while, and we are both super familiar with the uniform policy, so she and I both object and let him know that pregnant employees are exempt from the tucking policy. He waves his hand at us and says that we are incorrect and that all employees must tuck in their shirts. The other manager there, acting as a witness, chimes in that we are correct, but clueless manager cuts witness manager off and says he knows what the policy is and that previous management was just being lax. They weren't. Pregnant employees were actually exempt. The other cashier and I shrug and leave the office to go tuck our shirts in. Clueless manager left for the day right after talking to us. Here's where the malicious compliance comes in. We tucked our shirts in for sure, but if you aren't familiar with pregnant fashion, you essentially have two options for pants. Option 1 is using a belly band on your existing pants or using pants with a belly band attached already. A belly band is essentially a very wide elastic strap that goes around your baby bump to hold your pants up, which essentially puts the top edge of your pants at your ribs. Option 2 is to do the hairband trick, which is to take an elastic hair tie and loop it through the buttonhole of your pants and around the button of your pants. This gives you a few extra inches of waist room in your pants to accommodate the baby bump. Both options look absolutely ridiculous and are meant to be concealed under a shirt, and they only get more ridiculous the more pregnant you are, which we both were heavily pregnant by this time. For those unfamiliar, by 8 months pregnant, you're basically Violet from Willy Wonka with an internal Oompa Loompa kicking you in the bladder every 20 minutes. So we both emerge, waddle gloriously, from the back room where we tucked in our shirts looking absurd. I had my shirt tucked into my belly band, and the other cashier had hers tucked into her hairband closed pants. Clueless manager was already gone for the day, so he was not present to see our magnificent uniform compliance. He wasn't in for another 2 days, so he didn't see our dutiful compliance, but all of our customers and coworkers sure did. Our regulars asked us why we had our shirts tucked like that, and of course we obliged them and explained that our clueless manager insisted we tuck our shirts in to comply with the uniform policy. For 2 full days, and part of that first shift after clueless manager left for the day, customer complaints to corporate about our treatment rolled in, and coworkers called the employee hotline to report clueless manager. District manager is upset about the whole thing, which we found out on day 3. On day 3, return of clueless manager. He enters the store, sees the other cashier and myself with our beautifully ridiculous uniforms, and asks why we're dressed like that. You told us to tuck our shirts in. He gets red in the face and beelines to the office. He calls us into the office immediately and starts going off on us for not taking the uniform policy seriously. Mid-tirade, the district manager arrives, furious. She turned to us prego egos and nicely told us to untuck our shirts and head back out to the floor before returning to clueless manager and going ballistic on him for enforcing something that we pregos were exempt from. Turns out, clueless manager ruined district manager's day off because of all the complaints that came in about the 2 pregnant employees on how we were treated by him. The complaints weren't just about the manager, they were about the company uniform policy as well. The customers didn't know the real policy, and the employee hotline complaints as well. All of these had to be handled by the district manager ASAP because the sheer number of complaints in such a short time meant that the regional manager was breathing down the district manager's neck to resolve the issue. District manager forced an apology to us out of clueless manager and treated us to lunch. We also got our stools to sit on and the registers back. Clueless manager took our stools away because, if you can lean, you can clean. Clueless manager was sent back to HR training and fired shortly after for another similar violation. I was on maternity leave, so I didn't get to wish him farewell. Edit for those curious about the similar violation I mentioned. Clueless manager refused to special order a pin-backed name tag for an employee with a pacemaker. Our name tags were magnetic because young people don't have pacemakers. Clueless manager also refused to let this employee at least move the magnetic tag to the opposite side of his chest to at least not have the magnet sitting directly over his pacemaker because this was not in compliance with the uniform policy. This guy was actually insinuating that this employee was just looking to make trouble and get special treatment over a name tag. Am I the jerk for exposing a neighbor as a liar? A couple of years ago, I needed to earn some cash, so I started offering tutoring lessons in English to kids in my neighborhood. This was before lockdown. One of the neighborhood moms, Clara, 40-ish, had asked me to tutor her son, who's 12, because he was failing behind in English. I said sure, told her my price per hour, and she agreed, and sent her son at the agreed date. However, her son told me that I was going to tutor him in maths and sciences. I texted Clara and asked her to come talk to me, but she wouldn't answer. Eventually, the kid had to go home. I told him I wouldn't charge him the time he stayed, but I needed to ask his mom to come talk to me ASAP. A few hours later, Clara arrived at my apartment fuming because I hadn't tutored her kid. I told her that I was an English tutor. I had no intentions of tutoring anyone outside of that subject. She threw a fit about me not catering to her needs. I told her that she needed to find a proper tutor for her kid. She just left as angry as she arrived, and I left it at that. Fast forward to this year. I began offering tutoring lessons again, but I noticed that the kids from my neighborhood wouldn't ask me for lessons. I still got other students through some of my parents' contacts, but it kept me thinking. Then I learned through my nail tech, Gabby, that there was a mom's WhatsApp group. I had no idea because I'm neither a mom and my mom has no kids of school age, which were the requirements to be part of it. And in that group, Clara started talking bull about me as soon as someone had mentioned that I was offering tutoring lessons again. She would say that I refused to tutor her son and that I secretly don't like single moms. I know it sounds ridiculous. I myself couldn't believe it until Gabby showed me the text. I asked Gabby to add me to that group, and she did, and I immediately sent screenshots of my conversation with Clara and sent a text explaining my conversations with her and her son. After that, I put down my phone and focused on getting my nails done. When I looked at that chat again, I had been kicked out. Gabby showed me that Clara was frantically trying to pin the blame on me, saying that the texts were fake, that I was set on destroying her reputation, that I was trying to destroy her family, etc. Basically, she was throwing a tantrum. Some moms sided with Clara and sent me texts about me being an awful person to put Clara through that, and others apologized for believing her and asked me if I was still available for tutoring lessons. My mom told me that even if I was angry and what Clara did was wrong, I shouldn't have exposed her in the group chat, that I should have texted her privately and have her apologize to me directly, which I doubt would have happened. Still, I'm having second thoughts about how I handled things. Am I the jerk for exposing her as a liar in the group chat instead of talking to her privately? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Clara? Please let us know. My entitled mother ruins my high school graduation. I graduated high school back in 2010, so I try to remember the best I can. I live in Texas, but lived across the border to Mexico, because to be honest, it's way cheaper to live over there when you're making money here in the US. My high school graduation was in the middle of June, which is the hottest days of the year. Imagine having to dress nicely for a graduation to be done in the middle of a football field on a scorching summer day. I had told my mom about this, and she still wanted to bring my now 4-year-old little brother to the graduation. Since I was busy with all of this, I told her to invite our family to this. This meant my uncles, aunts, and especially my grandparents. She said she did, but since I was busy with the whole graduation and enrolling into college, I believed her. The day came, and she didn't tell a soul about my graduation. She just told me everybody was busy and to deal with it later. Since graduation was going to start in a few minutes, I just had to suck it up. Turns out she didn't tell anyone because she deemed this to be our family matters. After almost 3 hours in the heat, the graduation ended and my mother was nowhere to be seen. My friends were inviting me to their graduation parties, and I wanted to get my mom's permission for this, so I called her. Me: "Hey mom, where are you?" Entitled mom:
Oh, I went to get the car early so we can avoid traffic.
Me, thinking this is perfect, so I can tell her I'll go hang out with my friends at a graduation party so she can get back.
No, you can't. We need to go back home since they are saying there's cartels fighting each other, and it can get ugly, and we need to get home and be safe.
I told my friends about this, and sadly, I did not go to any graduation party. When I got into the car, I noticed that there's Chick-fil-A in there, and I'm confused as to why it's there since we didn't get any on our way to my graduation.
Oh, your brother was getting fussy because of the heat and hungry, so I took him to Chick-fil-A.
I was mad, but maybe she went like after they called my name since they were going in alphabetical order, and I was one of the first ones that got called. That way, she could get a picture of me being handed my diploma, and she said something that to this day, I hate her for it.
We left 20 minutes after it started.
OMG. Did you seriously miss my graduation for this? Me. What the heck? At least did you bring me anything to eat? Entitled Mom.
No, here's some leftover chicken tenders from your brother.
I assumed she was going to take me to a nice restaurant and I would meet my other family there. Nope. We went straight home and I didn't even eat dinner. I felt so ashamed and unappreciated that I just went to my room, closed my door, turned off my lights, and cried myself to sleep. Yes, I don't hate to admit it. I was an 18-year-old male that cried himself to sleep because his entitled mom made him feel like his life was not worth two craps, in her books or anybody else's in particular, and pushes me into a spiral of depression and self-loathing. Karen demands we start selling her homemade vegan meatballs. Way back when I was running a small cafe in a wee seaside town for what was supposed to be a month, it turned into 9 because of complications with the owner's surgery, but it was mostly fun, fine, and a little eye-opening. Until Karen. Karen had decided to make her own business from home selling vegan meatball type things. Good for her, but we made everything in our kitchen and cabinets ourselves, and we were proud of it. She would not accept this as an answer and actually threw 2 of these meatballs over the counter at me to give to the owner. Side note, I knew now why my friendly waitress called me from the back to deal with this woman, and the owner at the time was on a liquid diet in the hospital. After assuring her I would pass them on, she demanded the owner's personal number, which there was no way in heck I was about to give it to her. Karen argues and argues, and then argues a bit more, getting a bit louder in the process. Finally, I tell her, "What about your rude BS attitude makes you think we'd even consider working with you?" As she was standing there with her mouth open, I see tucked under the till was a single blue card. One of our not used in over a year business cards that had been discovered in an old folder a few days earlier. I hand that over without a word, and Karen snatched it like a kid and stomped out and waited by our wall-length windows. The look on her face when I answered the call from inside the shop was the best part of the week. I'd already said she wasn't getting anyone's personal number, so why she thought I had broken and given her anything other than the shop number was beyond me. Not the owner, not an employee. So, first time making a post. To kind of give people a picture of myself at the time this happened, I worked for the state, dealing with public benefits and assistance SNAP Medicaid and things like that. I'm 6 foot 2 inches tall. I used to be a powerlifter and I weigh 340 pounds, so yeah, I'm a big guy. The dress code for the state is business casual unless you're working at the central office for a public-facing position. I worked on the phones 90% of the time. On the day in question in 2018, I was wearing the one and only suit I own, being the size that the suit is tailored. Now this was a few years ago, so some things will be paraphrased as my memory is faulty. Few too many blows to the head in my youth. I DM for a Dungeons & Dragons game every Thursday at a friend of mine's house. I was in my late 30s, and as I was leaving work, my friend GP called me and asked if I could pick him up some new dice, as his 3 dogs decided that his dice looked like treats. So I hit a local game store on my way to his place. While I was there, I noticed a frustrated young lady trying to convey something to the owner. She was using ASL, American Sign Language, the only other language I understand besides English. I tapped her on the shoulder and signed to her to see if I could help her out. She explained that she was looking into getting into Dungeons & Dragons with some of her deaf friends from school. So I asked her some questions and found that they have never played, but due to the success of Critical Role, they want to try, and she is going to DM. I help her get everything she will need for new players, and she was just so happy that someone could help her out using American Sign Language, and that she thought it was really thoughtful of the owner to learn. I explained to her that she had been working with the owner when I got there, and that I was just an avid Dungeons & Dragons fan and DM myself, and that I was just stopping in for some dice. She looked at me, confused, and signed, "So you don't work here?" "Nope, just wanted to help since I know sign language." We laughed. So back to getting dice. That's when Karen striked. She starts yelling at the owner of the store, wanting to know why the owner was spending all of his time helping the cute young lady, but would not be bothered to help an elderly customer who just wanted to get her grandkid a video game. This game store does not sell video games. Now let's paint a picture. Karen here is about 5 feet tall, standard Karen haircut, and maybe 240 in weight. And in her early 40s, if she has a grandkid that can play video games, some poor choices may have been made in her past. The actual owner of the store said I help people that come into the counter, and if they need help with something out on the floor, I help them as best that I can. Then Karen points at me and says,
No, I'm talking about the owner.
the actual owner of the store and I look at each other and at the same time say, Lady, I/he does not work here, and I/he is the owner, and the place does not sell video games. We smile at each other. This is where Karen explodes on why does a game store not sell video games, and what is she going to do now? She waddles over to me and starts poking me in the chest, ranting something along the lines of, I should be nicer to older customers, and they are the ones keeping my store open. At this point, I pull out my state employee badge and point at it and say real slowly, Lady, I don't work here. And you can go next door to insert name of big box store that rhymes with Dred Myers. I then explained that by state and federal law, by poking me in the chest, she was guilty of assault. At this point, she sputtered and then slapped me. When I started to talk again, she slapped me again. At this point, I got ticked off, stood to my full height, and yelled at the top of my lungs that if she touched me one more time, that I would defend myself and she would not like the results. At this point, the owner has called the police and has the phone on speaker. We all hear when dispatch states that the officer is 2 minutes out. She screams and then tries to get me again. I stopped her, spun her around, and held her in place so that she couldn't get me again. This is when the police showed up. Now, when you have a guy standing a foot plus taller holding this screaming lady at bay, cops are automatically going to think that you are in the wrong. Officer 1 is a lady, Officer 2 is a guy. Officer 1 comes in first and sees this and says, Sir, please let go of this woman. I said I will as long as she won't hit me again. Karen starts going off on how I had hit her and that she was just defending herself and that I needed to be arrested. Officer 2, hearing this, pulls his taser and says, Man, you need to let her go now. I let her go and raise my hands to my head level. Karen spins around, kicks me, and then slaps me again. The owner of the shop says that's the third and fourth time that she's assaulted me. Officer 1 then places Karen in cuffs and escorts her out to the car. Officer 2 is a short guy, about 5 foot 8 inches tall or so, still pointing the taser at me and wants to cuff me. I explained that was not going to happen, as my wrists are too big for his cuffs and that he would need zip cuffs. And then he needed to call a sergeant if he was going to actually try and arrest me. Officer 2 steps back and says, Are you resisting arrest? I said no, but I will be exercising my rights to a lawful investigation prior to arrest. You know, innocent until proven guilty and that jazz, as I was the one defending myself from that screaming Karen your partner just took outside. Now, if you want me cuffed while you determine what's going on so you feel safe, I fully agree to that. I'm just explaining that my wrists won't fit in your metal cuffs. Officer 1 comes back in and says that Karen has been detained and is demanding a supervisor. The store owner pipes in with his side of the story. Officer 2 still pointing a taser at me and explains that Karen assaulted me twice and was in the process of assaulting me a third time before I had restrained her. At this point, Officer 2 puts his taser away and then jokingly asks if he can see if the cuffs really won't fit. I hold out my right hand and he pulls out his cuffs and is like, Dang, they won't fit. For everyone's information, minimum inside perimeter of the bracelet is 7.9 inches, 20 centimeters, when the ratchet is engaged at the first notch. The maximum perimeter is 6.5 inches when the ratchet is engaged at the last notch. My wrist is 10 inches around. Officers 1 and 2 were both amazed that the cuffs would not actually fit me and that even if they did, due to my size, they would not be able to cuff me behind the back. At this time, the sergeant shows up. He walks in and sees me and says, Hey Rusty, long time no see. Me, Hey Sarge, how are things? Long story shorter, Karen was arrested for assault and heck yes, I pressed charges. From what I was told by Sarge, this was her 12th incident of similar issues, but the first time that she had gotten violent with someone. Wow, that guy sounds huge. Who is the biggest person you've ever seen in your life? Please let us know.
Your mom got him.
Entitled mom thinks I should give my diabetic snacks to her daughter. So I'm a type 1 diabetic, and in the morning I went out for a bike ride. As I'm a diabetic, I always bring snacks with me in case I get low or get hungry. I bring a juice box, a few glucose tablets, 2 fruit chew bars, and 2 granola bars. just enough for me to be able to correct my blood sugar twice and have a small snack. As I was biking home, I passed someone sitting on the ground who looked like they were kinda distressed, so I pulled over to ask if they were okay. The guy was a little younger than me and told me he was a diabetic and showed me his medical alert necklace. He explained that he had gone low while biking but forgot to refill the snacks in his bag when he had left, so he was trying to figure out what to do. No one to bring him anything, but didn't want to call an ambulance over this. I offered him my snacks and to sit with him while we waited for it to go back up, explaining that I was a diabetic. After I had just sat down with him and given him the tablets, a woman came over and asked for my juice box for her daughter. I explained that I was giving him what I had because he was a diabetic and had low blood sugar, and I needed the rest to ensure I could get home safe. She started to tell me that she and her daughter had been biking for a few hours and she was hungry and just wanted my juice box and a granola bar. I asked if her daughter was diabetic and she said no, so I apologized and again explained nicely that I need those for myself. The conversation that followed is as such. Entitled Mom:
So why did you give him some?
Me: because he's a diabetic and his blood sugar is very low. For reference, our blood sugar is supposed to be between 4 and 8, and his was at 2.3.
Do you know him?
No, but as a diabetic, I know how dangerous lows can be, and if I was in his position, I'd hope a fellow diabetic would try to help me.
So, you don't know him?
The conversation continued like that, she asking why I cared if I didn't know him and me giving the same explanation, until the guy rechecked his blood sugar and it was back up to 3.5. As this was still a little too low for both of us to feel comfortable, I grabbed my juice to give it to him, and this is when Entitled Mom tried to grab it out of my hand, saying that if his blood sugar was still low, I should just call him an ambulance, and then I could give my snacks to her and her daughter. At this point, I was honestly kind of upset and told her to buzz off, and that as a mom, she should have thought to bring snacks for her daughter, and if I hadn't gone by, what would she have done? She went red in the face, called me a jerk, and stormed back with her daughter. The guy's levels went up and we parted ways, and as I started to bike away, I heard Mom shout after me, calling me a jerk again. Karen is taking advantage of my online baking business. I, 24 female, started this small online baking business almost 3 years ago. I'm currently pursuing an advanced degree and have given all the rights to my older sister, who's 27. We are officially registered as a bakery in our town. I am responsible for updating the monthly calendars and editing photos that are being posted on our Instagram and our Facebook. I'm in charge of the PR, so I have access to both accounts. I noticed that we had a regular customer who frequently orders our French macaroons. No big deal. Then I got a little sus when she started asking for specific colors while sending cake inspos. When I did a little digging, lo and behold, she has her own online cake business too. She was also using our macaroons on her cakes, repeatedly. At first, I was like, huh? This isn't new. I asked someone else to properly credit us, and we got tagged repeatedly for the macaroons we made. It was so simple, so I messaged the said customer and asked the same thing. The customer agreed. Well, I just discovered that what this girl did was literally tag us in a single photo. We don't pop up at all on the caption, no mention of our name alongside the macaroons that we made. We can't even share it. It was pretty obvious that she didn't want us to have any association with her cakes. To be honest, my sister's macaroons were the reason her cakes look well made. This is probably no big deal for you guys out there, but this is a small town, and only my sister and another local bake shop make them. They're pretty difficult to master. I got upset as heck when she recently posted a photo of her latest menu featuring our macaroons. It literally says 6 pieces macaroons on her cakes. That's the quantity that we sell. I saw red and immediately typed this message. Hi ma'am, we saw your posted photos and I think it's a bit unfair to advertise that you include 6 pieces macaroons on her cakes. But nowhere did it say that we bake them for you. Albeit unknowingly and without our permission, we had to do our own digging. Those are our shop's macaroons. You are willingly deceiving your customers by purposely omitting that another small local business produces these high-quality baked products for your cakes. See first photo equals her menu. So if you're going to continue using our French macaroons for your products permanently, it is only right that you place our name alongside the macaroons each time you use them. 6 pieces macaroons by our shop. For example, see second photo, a customer/baker who featured our name and product on her post. A good baker knows how to properly credit the local businesses that she employs. It's a small thing, but very thoughtful nonetheless. I hope you will do the same for your future transactions with us. My sister thought I was being rude, but I told her that I was just being stern. Her point was that our product is no longer ours once she puts it into her cake. I told her that it's different when it comes to baked goods. She's literally taking credit for her, sister's, hard work. So, am I the jerk? Edit. Forgot to say that every time we get credited on our products, they get thanked plus shared on our page for exposure. It's how we support other local businesses. It's common courtesy. Well, who do you agree with? OP or the cake maker? Please let us know.
Now I really want some cake.
It's difficult to say you don't work there when you are clearly working there. This incident took place about 10 years ago or so at my favorite pub next to my college alma mater. I had been going there about 3 years at the time and had gotten along extremely well with the staff. I'd stop almost every day after work to wind down. I work in the steel industry 4 minutes away. This takes place on a Saturday, and unbeknown to me at first, the same exact day a huge tailgating extravaganza is going on near the stadium for a huge rivalry game that is to take place in the afternoon. I had just gotten off work and wandered in and found my favorite spot at the bar, and as I sat, I started seeing more and more folks filter in. Older people, younger people, kids with parents, and of course, college kids. I'm around 38 at the time. Most of the older people and families stayed away from the bar to order food before the big game at the tables. Their pizza was good. Most of the college kids started to gather around the bar, and gather and gather and gather. Within 30 minutes, the bar portion itself packed 3 to 4 people deep, all getting drinks and shots and whatever else they needed. It is a madhouse, so with only one bartender, Missy, yeah, that's her name, and I think one bar back, they're getting overwhelmed. Then it happens. A full, fresh beer and shot are shoved down in front of me by Missy, and she says, "Mr. Majorly, dishes, now!" before she goes back to serving the mob of college football fanatics. I glance down to where the glasses are normally, and it's empty, nearly 100%. I guzzle some of the beer, slam down the shot, roll up my sleeves, and walk behind the bar to where the sinks are. I'm pounding out these dishes through 3 different sinks. Suds and water are flying everywhere. And of course, that's when it starts. Jerk 1. "Can I get a beer and a shot?" Me. "Sorry, don't work here," as the water splashes in my face. Jerk 2. "Can I get some wings and a beer?" Me. "Talk to Missy, I don't work here," as I'm stacking clean glasses. Jerk 3. "Can I get a round of fireballs for friends?" Me. Stacking 16-ounce wet glasses in a cooler to frost. "Sorry, I don't work here." Jerk 3. "What? Yes you do." "Nope, I'm getting free drinks to do dishes." "I need that gig. Can I at least get a beer?" Me. "I don't know what tab is what. Gotta wait for Missy," as I jump down to the end and start to move more glasses. This same exact scenario plays out every couple of minutes as people wade in from the back to the front, over and over, at least 40 times. Finally, the game is about to start, and the crowd starts to slowly filter out after an hour. I'm caught up and lean back to take a breath and stare at my shriveled up hands. Missy runs into the back to get some last-minute food order, and there it is, a finger snap. I look over, and some young college kid is getting my attention. Let's call her Karen. Karen.
"One more shot before I go."
She's slurring badly. Me. "I don't work here. Sorry, I was just helping with dishes."
"Of course you do."
I think she hiccuped.
"Just get me my shot so I can go, old man,"
as she slaps down a $5 bill. Me blinks repeatedly. Nope, this ain't happening. I lean forward from where I was resting, grab a double shot glass, and set it in front of her. Grab her drink choice and fill it to the brim. As she reaches for it, I pick it up and slam it down in 0.32 milliseconds right in front of her. She's just sitting there staring at me with half rage / half bewildered look. Me. "You're drunk and cut off as of this moment. Take your money and kindly leave. I hope you have fun at the game if you remember it." As she was trying to speak, I just pointed to the door. Defeated, she staggered out. I finally got to go back and sit at my seat and relax. I never did tell Missy. Glorified manager wants job security. So I work in the tow industry as a dispatch supervisor for a company that specializes in heavy equipment moves and trailers, on top of regular tow industry stuff like tire changes, boosts, and lockout services. I have a manager who we'll call Jeff. Jeff is a rough and tumble sort, a friend of the club, if you catch my meaning, and is more likely to yell and scream rather than commit to the customer service part of the job, which is my specialty. But that also extends to how he treats his employees. My way or the highway. Well, Jeff seems to have this idea that he is the only one who can quote customers on either long distance, heavy equipment, and trailer transports. He's not. For the record, every single dispatcher we have is perfectly capable of quoting the correct prices and booking calls, seeing as we do this every day that he's not around. But still, he gets up in arms and yells if we take calls and set them up without his involvement. He's been with the company 40 years, so he's embedded, but literally does the exact same job the dispatchers do and sometimes drives a truck to help out on the road. One day in particular, I take a call and quote the customer. Jeff loses his crap, starts flipping out about how he's supposed to be taking all those calls, and from this point on, I am to direct every call about heavy equipment, trailers, or long-distance moves to him so he could retain his large salary and job security. I don't think he really thought that one through, so malicious compliance it is. After the end of his shift, send him a message with the name and number of the caller. Weekend, send him a message. Middle of the night, send him a message. He's on vacation, send him a message. Camping, send him a message. On a ride with his brothers, send him a message. As one would imagine, he couldn't keep up with the demand, and as a result, we started to lose sales, constantly forgetting things, and customers would go elsewhere. Eventually, the boss hears of it. He's normally a pretty hands-off type of boss. He signs the checks, sure, but most of the time he's out on his boat ignoring the world. Boss calls him in to find out why he's been so off, and manager attempts to throw me and my team under the bus. So I talk to the boss, explain exactly what was said. Thankfully, the boss has known him for 40 years and knows what he's like, so he understands completely and has a big chat with him about it. Result? He's no longer allowed to monopolize handling the calls for the lion's share of the business, and our team of experienced dispatchers now no longer have to involve him in every call for service. Jeff generally avoids me now at work. I'm fine with that. Am I the jerk for telling my mom that my dad isn't interested in her anymore? My mom and dad have been separated for 26 years. Their separation ended badly and resulted in her getting custody of me and my brother. My dad went down a bad path in life and chose not to see us when we were growing up, so I knew nothing about him. It wasn't until I was 18 that he had regretted it and wanted a relationship with us. I always wanted to know my dad, so I agreed, but I had asked my mom if she was fine with it and asked if she would go with me, and she told me she was and would go with me. The first meeting ended up really well, except my mom kept throwing in his face that he left us. I had asked her to stop because it was making us uncomfortable. That's when she got upset and started telling my dad horrible stories about me. I really didn't know how to react. I was dumbfounded. So when we left, I asked her why she'd tell him stories about my past, and she told me that he needed to know. My dad and I made an agreement that we would see each other at least 3 times out of the year since he lives a bit away from me. My mom insisted that she tag along. It wasn't an issue, but my mom tends to dictate what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. She also spends over 5 hours putting on makeup to impress my dad and expects us all to wait for her. Then, when we talk about events in our lives, she tends to always talk badly about me. She's even gone as far as to make fun of my anxiety, claiming I don't have it and I'm just a good actress to my dad. Whenever me and my dad end up in conversation, she acts almost jealous and tries to talk over me the entire time. At one point, she's gone as far as to email my dad lies about me, saying not to get too close to me because I'm very jealous of his relationships with my family and I was manipulative. I'm really not sure why she does this, especially since all I was trying to do was have a bond with my father. After years of her constantly putting me down to my dad, I had enough. I had graduated from college and we were out celebrating me getting my degree. I asked my boyfriend if he could order my food for me because it was too loud and I have a soft-spoken voice, so the waiter couldn't hear me. My mom decided to make fun of me in front of my family and boyfriend, then proceeded to tell my dad, who attended my graduation, that he cursed her with a daughter like me because I was so weak. At that point, I just saw red because my celebration was ruined, So I got up from the table and yelled, "At least I'm not trying to constantly chase and impress someone that doesn't want me anymore by bringing my kids down," and walked out of my own party. My mom didn't talk to me for weeks, and my family says that I'm the jerk for hurting her feelings. I felt bad about how things went down, but I also don't feel like I was entirely wrong either. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their mom? Please let us know. Homeless ex-neighbor keeps showing up at our house, has told the neighborhood kids he's going to move into our backyard. So, this guy lived in the same house, duplex, did not live with us, as us for a couple of years. The entire time we've lived here, his roommate has been trying to get him to move out as it's a one-bedroom among other things. He's not on the lease, blah blah blah. 2 to 3 months ago, our neighbor put his foot down and gave the guy notice to move out, paid for a motel for a week on top of that for him. After that week, he showed back up and was sleeping on our neighbor's porch. The weather was super bad, and my husband went and took him dinner and asked what was up. He said he was just in between places and had somewhere to go after 4 days. My husband, somewhat reluctantly, scared it would become a thing, let him sleep in one of our spare vehicles since it would be very cold and rainy and we were clear it was just for those 4 days, which, like we knew, was a gamble. But honestly, we could not watch him sleeping exposed in that weather, and it was just for a few days. Clearly, in hindsight, a mess up. That was last week. Got home from work today and saw him hanging out with our neighbor and the neighbor's kids. Okay, go inside, change, and I'm cutting up stuff for dinner. Our kitchen windows face our side and backyard. I look up since I see something catch my eye out the window. He's walking through our backyard that only leads to our own backyard, a single woman's backyard, and a family's fenced-in yard. Then he just stood there. My husband saw and quietly came to the kitchen window next to me. After, ex-neighbor left our yard via someone else's backyard. So after he left, my husband went outside and like ex-neighbor moved one of our patio chairs into the L-shaped back part of our house and had his coat hung on it. My husband was confused. Went and asked the neighbor's kids if they had talked to him. Apparently, he told them that he's been going to the store every day, the same one, trying to get a tent so he can make a camp in our backyard, and how he will have to get a tarp to go over it too, and likes planning out his hobo camp he's going to try to set up in our backyard. Our backyard is small. Having a camp will take up 1/2 of the yard. We have 2 large dogs, one who greatly enjoys pooping on things, and he has not talked to us since we let him stay in the car, and my husband made it clear it was temporary. Upstairs neighbor is livid with ex-neighbor since ex-neighbor has been hanging out on his steps when he's at work and stuff too. Feel bad for the dude, not gonna lie, but there's a huge homeless camp the next town over and he refuses to do anything to make his life better, to the point he legit just expects people to let him live off of them, which is why he has never stayed in our house. Really just hope he doesn't, because he's just on so many people's last nerve, and at this point, everyone dislikes him and some people are scared of him. We have places to help people who are homeless in the area, he just keeps trying to live off of the neighborhood though. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you let him set up camp in your backyard or not? Please let us know.
I'd probably call the cops on him, to be honest.
I bought this motherboard almost a year ago and only opened it now, so give me my money back. I work cashier customer service in a computer department store, and I'm going about my day when this skinny short guy comes through my line holding a couple motherboards in his hand. He drops them on the counter and says, "I'd like to make an exchange. This motherboard has bent pins." I'm sorry to hear that. Was it like that out of the box? I said, to which he replies yes. So I go ahead and scan the receipt and search the database for this particular serial number. Lo and behold, this thing was purchased slightly less than a year ago, and only now is he coming back to the store complaining that the pins are bent, claiming he only opened the box just recently. Since the purchase was made so long ago, I'd have to have a manager come and decide if we can take it back. However, I trust S, name of my manager for this tale, and I think he'll be able to help you out. I dial the manager number on my register phone and wait for his arrival. Upon arriving, I explain the situation and then the customer shares his thoughts. His logic was, this was a $200 ITX open box motherboard, sold for $50. It included no I/O shield, cables, or anything else apart from the board. Since the pins were bent, let's go with his story that they came that way. He believed he could return it. Since he purchased a CPU alongside it, the price dropped to $30. This man bought a $200 motherboard for $30 and didn't think, maybe this is too good to be true, or didn't think to look as to why it was so cheap. After all this BS spewed to my manager, both of us quickly realized this was most likely a BS return, with the dude having bent the pins somehow and getting upset about it. After explaining that we can just give him this new motherboard that he picked out, retailing at $70, he gets upset. My manager leaves and he tells me, total incompetence. And from this point, I basically just want this dude to leave, and I'm also making sure he understands that none of what is happening is my fault. He leaves, and the customers next to him look at me with pitiful eyes and sighs of relief alongside me, as I look at them in exhaustion, and they're like, man, that was something, and I call over my next customer. Karen tries to make me do yoga. Our family has Pancake Sundays, which is where our house gets together for a sit-down family breakfast with my mom's infamous pancakes. As you would expect, I'm always down for it. Love family time, love pancakes. My family is also very active and athletic, and usually does a workout or yoga in the mornings. However, I'm not a very athletic or active person, and because I hate being compared to the rest of my family, I hate feeling weak while they exercise. I usually don't work out with them. Last week, I did do yoga though, because my mom asked and it was Mother's Day. This week, my mom said I wasn't allowed pancakes unless I did yoga with them again. I said that was fine, I still wasn't going to do the yoga, but was a bit upset that she was trying to force me to do something I didn't want to do. In the morning, my sisters kept texting me for me to come to breakfast, but I didn't really want to because watching everyone else enjoy pancakes while I didn't wasn't super appealing to me. Finally, I went up because I didn't really want to miss family breakfast, only to see that my mom made my favorite crepe pancakes that she only makes for birthdays, along with fruit and whipped cream. Take note that I had told Mom that I missed her crepes a few times, but she waited until I couldn't eat them to make them. I really didn't want to watch everyone else enjoy the food while I couldn't, and was getting upset that she tried to go out of her way to punish me for not working out with her, and I didn't want to be around my family when I was getting upset like that. So I went to go downstairs. My stepdad stopped me and in front of the whole family told me off for not wanting to spend time with my family, for not contributing to the family, for my mom always having to push me to do anything. I didn't really say anything. I've been taught not to talk back to my parents, but I can't help but feel upset. I take walks with my mom and sister whenever she asks. It's only been a couple of times in the past year of lockdown that I said I didn't want to go. Whenever the lawn needs to be mowed or they need help, I'm always the one they ask. My other siblings comparatively don't help out as much, and yet I'm always the one who gets criticized. I feel ridiculous for getting so upset over something so stupid, and I don't want to face them right now because I honestly can't tell if I'm in the right or not. Also, to be clear, it's not a weight thing. I'm not overweight or super unhealthy. I just don't like working out in the mornings. Edit for info. I'm 19 and have been living with my family since lockdown started. I was in college residence before that. Edit. Thanks to everyone who commented. Honestly, I thought that it was mainly going to be me being the jerk, so I'm kind of surprised that almost everyone said I'm not the jerk. A lot of what people made me think a lot. I'm pretty used to just accepting that my parents are right and I'm in the wrong, and just trying my best to move on. Honestly, I wish I could say this means that I'm not going to take it from them anymore and finally put my foot down. But my parents are paying my college tuition while I pay living expenses. So until I have a job that lets me pay them back, I'm going to have to put up with it or else they won't support me anymore. Thanks anyway, everyone. Glad to know I'm not completely crazy for getting upset over this. Well, who do you agree with? OP or their mom? Please let us know.
She should know better than to use her delicious treats to get back at people. Not cool, Karen. Not cool at all.
Brother lied about me cheating on my boyfriend. I got revenge. My brother, 23 male, we're twins, is so mean to me, 23 female. But the worst thing happened 5 years ago. I got my first boyfriend when I was 18 and a senior in high school. I know we were young, but I really loved him. We had been dating for 10 months when my brother randomly decided, for literally no reason at all, to make up a story about how he caught me cheating and tell it to my boyfriend. He planned it all out, he came up with details, he made it sound real. And because he's such a scarily good liar and a master manipulator, my boyfriend believed him. No matter what I said or did to prove it wasn't true, he believed my brother over me. My brother kept up with his act the entire time and refused to admit he was lying. At one point, I thought I'd finally gotten my boyfriend to believe me, but then he broke up with me a few months later and confessed it was because he was still convinced I had cheated on him and he couldn't move past it. He said, "The worst part is that you won't just tell me the truth." And not to sound dramatic, but that still haunts me. I want to cry every time I think about it, and I still miss him to this day. Also, I think it's important to note that my brother has never once apologized. He's so insanely mean that he just thinks it's funny. I even asked him once if he'd consider hitting my ex up and telling him the truth for my peace of mind, and he just laughed at me. I never got over what my brother did, and I always told myself I was gonna do the exact same thing to him one day. He's dated several girls since high school, but he had never been serious enough about any of them for me to consider tricking them. I knew I wouldn't hurt him like he hurt me if I just tricked one of his flings or something. But he finally got his first serious girlfriend last year, and after thinking about it for a long time, I decided I was gonna do it. We live in different places now, so I had to do it all online. I used a different method than he did. I contacted his girlfriend pretending to be the girl he had been cheating with. I made up an elaborate, detailed story like he did to me and even photoshopped proof and stuff. I made my story even more believable than he made his, and exactly like he did to me, I went as far as denying it even to him because I knew he might use my texts and calls to prove to his girlfriend that it isn't true. He knew I was behind it though, solely because the girl I made up doesn't exist and there's no one else that would do this, but I kept denying it. His girlfriend wholeheartedly believed me, and my brother kept calling and texting me and begging me to give it up, even though I still wouldn't admit it was me. He was manipulating me and arguing that it's different because I was younger when he did it to me, and my relationship wasn't serious. But my relationship was serious, and like I said, I still miss my ex. My brother really messed me up. I have empathy though, he doesn't. And I was starting to feel bad for his girlfriend because she's innocent. I was kind of regretting everything and thinking that maybe I should tell his girlfriend the truth, for her sake, not his. But then, his girlfriend asked me a question which led to her admitting that she's been suspicious of him for a long time. So I pried a little bit and encouraged her to look through his phone. She told me she couldn't because she didn't know the passcode and he wouldn't give her access to it. I guessed a few passcodes I thought it could be and gave them to her under the guise of seeing it once, but not being sure which one I'd seen. That was kind of dumb, but I couldn't think of anything else to say and she didn't question it. She got in because it ended up being the same one he's had since 2012 when our dad got us iPhones and made us use the same passcode. Idiot. Anyway, lo and behold, it turns out my brother actually cheated on her, and my setup was the reason she found out. He's been talking to and hooking up with multiple girls for pretty much the entirety of their relationship. I'm not surprised because he's a terrible person and cheating seems right up his alley, but I'm shocked at the same time. I literally can't believe things worked out this perfectly. It feels like a dream or something. The universe loves me. I hate to revel in his girlfriend's misery, but I was feeling guilty about her being collateral damage, so I feel like this is the best possible outcome. My lie ended up being the truth. Well, not exactly, but you know what I mean. So I didn't scar his girlfriend or leave her with permanent damage for no reason. All my interference did was speed up the process of the truth coming to light. In fact, my brother may have been able to hide his cheating forever if not for me. He probably would have just manipulated his girlfriend and or refused to give her phone access forever. She hasn't broken up with him, and I'm honestly not sure if she will. I don't know how relevant that is, but it attests to how manipulative he is. He does people over all the time, but somehow always gets his way anyway. It's honestly infuriating and scary. Anyway, I'm still not going to admit to my brother that I'm behind it all, because there's no point. That would just get me in deeper trouble. I got a comment on my original post that said, "Deny till you die, baby." And that's exactly what I'm planning on doing. Life is crazy. What would you do if someone messaged you telling you that your boyfriend or girlfriend was cheating on you? Please let us know.
Ha! I'd laugh at them. Who else would even give you the time of day, Reddit boy?
My 7-year-old nephew confronts rowdy bar patron. A series of scheduling mishaps resulted in my 7-year-old nephew accompanying me to my shift today. I had agreed to babysit, I had agreed to work. I had coordinated both poorly, by the time I realized it was too late to go back from either. I felt bad about my sweet little guy having to spend the afternoon in a boring restaurant when we usually do something fun together, so tried to find safe and appropriate ways for him to get involved. I lucked into finding a trainee badge at my station. I got him all set up with an apron, a pad, and a PPE and started having him take all tables orders with me. I told him we'd work as a team where he'd ask what they wanted while I wrote it down. He's still perfecting his handwriting. At first, he was frustrated, thinking I was making up work to keep him busy and he wasn't really contributing or I was babying him. So I made a big deal of saying we were short-staffed that day and he was helping me manage the restaurant and really taking a lot off my plate. The other staff backed me up on this, and then he got super excited. He was very into it, more affable, professional, and engaging than plenty of other trainees who've come through the doors. It was adorable. He was enjoying himself, and it was great for my tips. Win all around. I work in a very family-friendly restaurant, and most of the tables had kids themselves, so we're great with humoring him and had no problems answering repeat questions or waiting a second when he forgot his lines. But then disaster struck. I got one of those awful customers at the bar, getting hammered in the middle of the day and impossible to satisfy. He was your typical grumpy boozer. Older, tank top, no deodorant, no tip. Phone ringer turned to the loudest setting, kept trying to light up despite our explicitly clear no smoking signs, and so forth. Most people were very kind in raising concerns about their meal because they saw I had a kid with me. Regulars who I know to be the type to shout, "Ketchup!" across the room or snap their fingers to get my attention were instead flagging me down and saying to my nephew, "Excuse me, young man, when you have a second, would you mind getting more ketchup, or another glass of water, or a new place setting, or whatever the case?" Started thinking I should take him with me to work every day. But this bar patron was shouting, "Another!" and pounding his fist and making a scene. I had my little guy hang back while I was dealing with his patron, but the restaurant isn't huge. He could clearly see what was going on, and I could tell he was checking my interactions with this bar guy. I gave the bar patron several quiet reminders as to how he needed to conduct himself, but they did not penetrate at all, and I was becoming visibly anxious. Not only because of my nephew, but out of concern for the comfort of the other tables and bar patrons. So then it escalated to the point that we had a real problem. The man was making obnoxious comments about the service and yelling at the game we had on the TV. My nephew was not the only kid we had in the place, so this was particularly unacceptable. Every time his team did something he didn't like, he was yelling words he had no business yelling in our restaurant. I told him more than once to cool it, but the game was almost over. It seemed like he'd come in to watch it, so I figured once it wrapped up, he'd leave and I can avoid a confrontation in front of my nephew. I figured he'd be nervous with all the shouting and the words being said. So when my nephew piped up to speak the next time the bar patron made a crack about the terrible service, I was not anticipating this boy to say in a severe tone, "Buddy, cool it. You've been warned." I wasn't sure whether to laugh from nervousness of my own or from being impressed, but I tried to signal to him that I had handled it without throwing additional fuel on the fire. We had maybe 15 more minutes of peace. Then someone in the game scored, or didn't score, or something undesirable for his side, and he erupted yet again with a string of words he shouldn't have been saying. We sort of tolerate a little of that behavior after about 7 p.m., but not during the day, and I'd already tried to set him straight more than once. I was getting really harried, and we actually were short-staffed that day, so I was not merely as mentally or physically equipped to deal with it as I otherwise might have been. Before I can make up my mind as to how we'll handle the situation, my nephew charges over and goes, "All right, that's it. Settle your tab and find the door." I wanted to rush in to intervene, but I just froze. Everything was so tense, I lost my ability to speak the English language, my only language, for a few seconds. The guy started responding, making no mention of my nephew's age, instead remarking on how the service had been slow and the TV's picture quality had been lousy, and he wanted a refund. My nephew goes, "Don't like it here? Then it's a good thing you're leaving, but not before you settle up." And then he gives me this affirmative nod, like we were foxhole buddies or allies. That snapped me back to reality, and I was hurrying to get in the middle of them, but before I knew it, my 4-foot-something nephew is chesting up and practically shouting, "Are you leaving, or do I have to make a call?" And the guy was stunned into silence. Both because I'll bet he was unsure of what my nephew meant by that, I know I was, but also because he probably noticed he had attracted the attention of other bar patrons who were just as upset about how this game was turning out, so eager for an excuse to get physical. Like an old guy picking on a kid, if I could feel them staring daggers through him, he certainly must have, even in his altered state. So he slapped some money on the table, the bartender didn't even bother to count it, and he stumbled off. We watched and made sure he wasn't driving. I was relieved the conflict was resolved, and the rest of the shift went off without a hitch. My nephew was even more popular in the restaurant for the remainder as well. When it all finally wrapped up, and I had a second to catch my breath and clear my head, I asked him where on earth he got all that from, and perhaps, not surprisingly, he said, "Nah, I don't know. It's how I saw the bar people on TV talk." I asked him, "Who were you fixing to call?" And he said, "Well, no one. It's what they say on TV. I figured he'd know what it meant." I was too amused and surprised and relieved, and in a rush to get him back in time for pickup to dig too much deeper. But I'm assuming by the bar guys on TV, he meant Cheers. My sister and I loved that show growing up, and I would be shocked if he's already watching Sunny in Philadelphia. But he has an older brother, so who knows. I might have to follow up on this actually. His mom was also amused, but unlike me, not surprised by the showdown. She was pleased to see her son made in tips her babysitting fee and then some. It was touch and go at a few moments there, but overall, a good and memorable shift that I just had to share. I don't work for your store. A decade ago, I worked as the resident technician at Staples. I repaired computers for our store's customers. Our uniform was khakis and a black polo with a lime green collar and company name and logo on the chest. I got off shift and headed over to Best Buy to look at DVDs. While I'm there, I spot a regular customer of mine. She was an odd duck, but very sweet and used to being treated poorly because of how she dressed, even though she was just a little old lady in Maine. Think tan mom crossed with any super gaudy golden everything. She just liked weird clothes and outrageous makeup and nails. Anyway, she knows I don't work at Best Buy, but couldn't get anyone to help her. I wasn't doing anything important, and she had bought hundreds of dollars of stuff from me over the last few months, so I started my sales questions. I like to know what people are looking for, what they intend to use the product for, and price range. Often, people insist they need one thing, but actually need something completely different, and it's easier to ask rather than to do exchanges. We go to the computer section, and I try to find an associate while helping her. We hop on a demo laptop, and I do a Best Buy search for things she might be interested in. What she wanted didn't appear to be in stock, so I switch over to the Staples site to see if we had it in stock. We did have it, and I told her I'd meet her at the store as soon as I finished buying DVDs. I said maybe 20 minutes, as my store was only a mile or so down the road from the mall. She left, and I got into line. All of a sudden, I get yanked out of line by a man I've never seen in Best Buy floor manager attire. He proceeds to drag me to another register, and I'm thinking this is a rude way to open a new lane. He pulls me behind the register and tells me to open up and start ringing up customers. I just have a stupid look on my face as I don't know what's happening. I try to say that I don't work there, but he isn't listening. A couple of people are staring at us from other lines. I say I can help if they really need it, but I don't know how to work their system, and I shouldn't be handling money since I don't work there. He gets all huffy, obviously not really listening. He punches in his code to unlock the register and walks off. I turn to look around, bewildered. A few people are laughing. The cashier right next to that lane said, "What the heck was that?" I replied that I had no clue. I asked to speak to a manager. A call went out over the speaker system, and the same person came back and yelled at me for not working. I asked for his boss. He threw a tantrum, but the cashier called the store manager on her own as they obviously saw that their floor manager was off their rocker. The GM comes over and asks what I'm doing behind a register, and I said I don't know. I was just trying to buy 2 movies. The GM said that I shouldn't be trying to check myself out, and I said I wasn't trying to. The floor manager keeps spouting off that the new hires are awful. Then it clicks for the GM. I lay out the story, including how the register was unlocked for me and how I could have just emptied the register and taken off. The GM lays into the floor manager, pointing out my uniform is a competing store with a different color scheme. The floor manager realized how stupid they had been and was told to wait in the GM's office. I got my stuff rung up and paid for at the register they had stuck me at, and I headed back to Staples. All in all, I spent an hour at Best Buy. It was a funny story to tell the lady waiting at Staples. My boss even had me log back in to ring her out and said he would log me out in an hour so I'd get paid for the time I spent making a sale in my off time. Do you remember the store called Best Buy? If so, what was the last thing you bought there? Please let us know.
Oh, who needs Best Buy when you've got Amazon?
Am I the jerk for threatening to terminate an employee if she doesn't surrender her pet fox? For context, I work in engineering and am a manager of 4 employees, out of 40 or so at our office. A while back, one member of our team was talking about how she was planning to get a pet fox. I didn't think much of it. I looked it up, and they're legal in our state. She apparently got the fox about a month ago and has been sharing pictures of it frequently with others, including keeping one on her desk. But we've also been noticing several problems. Firstly, when she first got the fox, she was missing from work quite often. She was leaving early, taking 3-hour lunches, and arriving late almost every day. She was aware of it and apologized, saying, "Sorry, I had to take the fox to a vet 1 hour away," or "Sorry I'm late, the fox peed on me this morning before work and I had to re-shower," but it was happening nearly every day. I talked to her about it and she was embarrassed and said that she'll do better. And to her credit, she has been doing better about that for the past couple of weeks. But then the other issue, the bigger issue now, is the smell. After she got the fox, I got a couple of complaints from others about that she smelled badly. I only noticed it at times, but it was definitely there. Most noticeably, on top of that, when she said she was late because she had to re-shower when the fox peed on her. I'm not sure if she actually showered, but it certainly didn't smell like it. But more recently, it's becoming almost constant. When she walks into the room, you can smell it. Even if she leaves her jacket on the desk when she goes out to lunch, the jacket smells like fox. And it was much worse this week than the week before. I had an uncomfortable conversation with her about it a week ago and said it was becoming a problem, and she seemed very upset and promised that she's showering right before work every day and washing her clothes frequently to make sure it's not an issue. But again, over the past week, it's gotten much worse, not better. So after talking with my supervisor for advice, on Friday, I had another talk with her and told her that the issues weren't really improving despite her efforts and that something has to change. And it seems like it's impossible for her to meet attendance and hygiene requirements while caring for a pet fox. And if this doesn't change, we would have to consider firing her. This made her very upset, and she started crying and saying how heartless that was, and how I was unappreciative of everything she had done over the past 2 years, and how would I like it if someone talked about my kid like that. I do feel bad for making her that upset, but I wasn't sure what else to do. I'm wondering if I handled it correctly. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the fox owner? Please let us know.
I know the struggle. I need to take at least 3 showers a day or I smell like Reddit boy over here.
Am I the jerk for being mad at my wife for causing a scene at the restaurant? My wife has long-lasting issues with her mother. She hasn't spoken to her in 6 years. To be frank, I've never understood why my wife doesn't want her mother around. All I know is their relationship went south after my father-in-law divorced my mother-in-law. It was a decision they both made, so I don't get why she keeps punishing her mother like that. I was open to have meetings with my mother-in-law. I've been in contact with her for a year, and my wife knew. She said it's up to me to want to have a relationship with her mom, but I shouldn't try to make her re-establish a relationship with her. Things remained the same for months. My mother-in-law would see my wife a few times a week, but they don't talk. And I just thought that my wife and mother-in-law were stuck in this conflict and needed one meeting to at least open up to tackle this issue, especially before our son is born. I arranged for dinner at a restaurant on Mother's Day. My wife thought it was just for the 2 of us, but I kept giving her hints about the person I was expecting. My mother-in-law arrived, and next thing I knew, my wife got up from her seat and started yelling in front of everybody. I told her that her mom tried many times to reconcile, but she was just being unfair with her grudge, holding attitude, and not giving her a chance for a sincere talk. All I asked was for a sit down and to talk things out with her mom. She said she didn't want to see her, especially on this day, and thought I was doing this for her as a mom. And I was. I begged her to sit, and I'd get her mom to leave if she was bothered that much, but she didn't listen. My mother-in-law was standing behind crying while everyone was looking. My wife took her phone and purse and then left. I had mixed feelings, but I felt mostly upset things played out different than what I had in mind since my wife has no problem with her mom speaking to me. My wife has been staying with a friend for a week. I visited her twice to talk, and every time we ended up arguing. I told her she didn't need to cause a scene at the restaurant and could have been a little bit graceful to sit with her mom at the table to talk. But she said I needed to blame myself. I asked her, didn't Mother's Day mean anything to her? All I got was a cold stare. Growing up without my mother made my life incomplete. I never had any mother figures in my life, and it's because of my father. I just think everyone should count their blessings, and she should realize it's never too late to fix the problem between her and her mom if she chooses to see how lucky she was to still have her mom around. But she kept blaming me for the scene at the restaurant and said she won't forget that day and flat out told me, "You know what's the worst thing about betrayal? It never comes from an enemy." This complicated the matter more. I thought about what went wrong, and it's clear my wife isn't willing to even try. Edit. I'm 23, male. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
It's always important to respect people's boundaries. If Reddit boy did something like this to me, he'd be in the ER.
A pound of everything. This is probably close to 20 years ago when I was working in a deli in a supermarket. There were usually 2 to 5 of us working back there, as it could be relatively busy depending on the day and the time of the day. It was a pretty average day and maybe a little on the slow side, but I recall 2 ladies approaching the counter and, as I always did, put a decent smile on and asked how I could assist. The 2 ladies were middle-aged, at my best guess and recollection, and it seemed one of them was there to order and the other was possibly just providing company. The customer spoke to me very politely and gave me a list of about 6 various lunch meat and cheeses that she needed before turning back to her friend and engaging in conversation that I either don't remember or was too low volume to hear at the time. I'm not in the habit of paying attention to others' business. As it were, I'm not sure if she actually told me how much of each item she wanted, as I was repeating all 6 in my head to make sure I remembered each one. As I was placing the first on the slicer, I decided to walk back to the counter and verify just to make sure. "Apologies, was that half a pound of everything?" I asked. She only half turned back to me and muttered an affirmative with an accompanying nod and dismissive flick of her hand while her friend made a little more eye contact with me. That was enough for me, and I went back to work, cut each item one by one for the customer, and lined them up on the counter for her one by one. I finished slapping the last sticker after weighing the last item and asked if she was sure there wasn't anything else I could assist with. This is where a fairly normal interaction went a little crazy. She picks up the first one and looks at it, and slams it on the counter and picks up another to look at it. And then she started screaming at a volume that could be easily heard across the entire store.
"I said I want a pound of everything."
I was pretty stunned, and imagine I stood there blinking at her for a couple seconds before I was able to respond, explaining that I had been unsure and even asked her again before I started slicing. Apparently, this wasn't what she wanted to hear because she got louder and started stomping her feet, repeating over and over that she wanted a pound of everything and that I had asked her no such thing, while I kinda stood there like a deer in the headlights. The other 2 I was working with just kinda stared in shocked silence as well, having little idea about what was going on. There were no other customers, so one of them could have probably been helping me with the order in retrospect. I'm fairly fortunate it didn't last long. I made a brief eye contact with the other woman again, who tugged on the sleeve of her raving friend and told her that I had, in fact, just asked about the quantity, and that she had told me a half pound was accurate. There was an immediate change. This lady at least had the decency to be absolutely mortified by her own behavior, apologizing profusely for the entire duration that it took for me to prepare another half pound of everything she requested. It was a struggle not to laugh at her during the time it took for me to finish the order, mostly out of nervousness and slightly frazzled nerves over the ridiculousness of it all. She left politely enough, and for the next couple months, it was the running joke of the department that she wanted a pound of everything. Am I the jerk for telling my close friend she shouldn't have another baby? I'm 25, female, and my friend Pam, 24, female, has a son, 2, male, who I love dearly. Pam and I have known each other since we were 15, and we had similar dreams. We are both in a group of friends that are tightly knit. Pat is on again and off again with her baby's dad, and they had an explosive argument, so she stayed at my place for the week. I was surprised during the stay because she didn't really watch her son. He was bumping his head on the walls, playing with the toilet, and playing on the stairs. I watched him, but when I had to go to class, I handed him to Pam, and most of the time, she had let him loose again so she could be on her phone or whatever. She mentioned she wanted to have another baby with her boyfriend, and she made it seem that because she had nothing else to do, she should give her son a sibling. She asked for my opinion, and when I asked her if she wanted my honest opinion, she said yes. I told her she shouldn't because she still lives with her 85-year-old grandmother. She isn't financially stable, and her relationship with her boyfriend is rocky. I told her bringing another life to this world is a huge responsibility, and she mentioned a time last year when I tried getting her to go back to school when I tried giving her my study guides for anatomy and physiology during my undergrad days. I was confused why she brought that up, and she said that I act like I'm better than everyone. I only tried encouraging her to go back to school because she admitted she was jealous that everyone else in our group of friends were achieving their goals. I assured her I was not trying to put her down, and she said that I told my other friend that I wanted to have a baby with my fiance once I finished my master's degree and passed my boards. I was like, okay. I never applied any of that to her, but it's true. I wanted to have mental and financial stability before having kids. She started to cry and insisted on leaving. I tried to get her to stay and leave in the morning when the roads were clear, but she pushed me away and left. She's telling our friends that I'm a snobby jerk. I called her and texted her that I was sorry if my opinion hurt her, and my opinion was something she didn't even have to consider because she's an adult, and she just said that I'm a cold-hearted jerk. Am I the jerk here? I've tried to talk to her about the possibility that she is experiencing depression, but she tells me to mind my own business. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is Pam? Please let us know.
Sometimes the truth hurts, baby mama.
My entitled kids refuse to eat at the dinner table. I, 26, female, have been dating Henry, 33, male, for about 2 years now. He has 2 kids from his previous marriage, Kevin, who's 8, and Ella, who's 6. He and his ex-wife, Jess, have 75-25 custody, so ever since Henry moved in with me a few months ago, the kids stay with us 25% of the time. Jess is a laid-back parent who lets her kids do whatever they want. Henry doesn't like confrontation, so he defers to Jess most of the time. There are many instances where I disagree with her parenting style, but I'm not their mother, and I know my place. The issue: Henry isn't the best cook, so in our home, I do all of the cooking. He cleans up. Whenever he has the kids, I make their meals. The way I was raised, you eat your meals at the table. I feel like it's the respectful thing to do when someone has prepared food for you. So I was a bit shocked when the first night I cooked for his kids, they took their plates without a word and went to watch TV on the sofa. I called them back and asked them to please sit at the table. They listened, and the rest of the time we had no problems. Then, the next time they came back from Jess' place, we had the same issue. When I told them to please sit down, they began to complain.
Mom lets us have our iPads at dinner. Mom lets us eat in our rooms.
I understood their confusion. Of course, being kids, it must be difficult to adjust to having 2 different homes. Of course, it must be confusing to have different dinner rules. I explained that while they may be able to eat where they want at their mother's, at our house, I wanted them to eat with us and to see their beautiful faces enjoy the meal. After they went home, I got an angry phone call from Jess. She said that I was just Henry's girlfriend and that I had no right to tell her kids what to do. I told her that yes, I was just the girlfriend, and yes, I shouldn't overstep. But while they are in my home, eating my food, I feel that I can have a say in how they eat it. Besides, it isn't as if I told her kids that my way was the right way or criticized her parenting to their faces. I told her it was unrealistic that I'd have 0 role in childcare when they live with me and Henry 25% of the time. I cook their food, do their laundry, and drive them places, so while I am not their mother, I am more than a stranger. She blew up at me and called me a jerk and has been harassing Henry non-stop about this. He pulled me aside yesterday, asking me to please just give in to keep the peace. The kids hate my rule, Jess hates my rule, and he's afraid that they won't want to live with him anymore. I told him he can cook for them himself, but as long as they're eating my food, I want to stand my ground. He told me he expected better from me and is upset. All 4 people in this conflict seem to think I'm the jerk right now, and I'm really lost. This is my first time dating someone with kids. I realize I may be out of my depth, so I'd appreciate some unbiased insight. Am I the jerk? Edit. Just to clarify, as people seem confused in the comments, I talked to Henry the first night and we both agreed to the rule. I wouldn't make a major decision without his consent. He changed his mind after Jess threatened to sue for custody. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know.
Ouch, this is a tough one. Please do leave a comment with your opinion. I can't wait to read them.
Get rid of my vacation? Have fun replacing me. I worked at a company that gave out exorbitant amounts of vacation. Anyone who worked there for 25 plus years received 8 weeks of vacation and 2 weeks of personal time. This was a family-owned company, but rather large. We ran 3 shifts, totaling 250 plus people. Enter Jimmy. Jimmy was a grizzled old man. He started at the company when he was just 20. Now he was 63 and gave absolutely zero hoots. Jimmy also knew how to make a specific part for our product, him and one other higher up in the office. One day, the plant owner comes out and announces he's selling to a corporation. He's older and ready to retire. He promises that there will be very little change and wishes us all well. The new company comes in and immediately goes after many of the great benefits we had. The first thing they do is cut everyone's max vacation down to 4 weeks and do completely away with the personal time. Anyone who's maxed out had until December 31st of that year to use it up, and they wouldn't pay it out. Then they go into the office and clean house, firing anyone who's close to retirement, including Jimmy's backup. But they also do away with one very important rule. You no longer have to get vacation approved. You can just call in and take it. Jimmy is upset and they know it. They realize he's the only one in the building that can do his job now. So they hire a new kid for him to train, most likely to permanently replace Jimmy. So Jimmy does what anyone would do. He calls in the first training day for the new hire and lets us know he's going to use all of his paid time off at once and promptly takes 10 weeks off. We had a backstock of parts he had made, so it wasn't too unnerving. But for 10 weeks, Jimmy went and applied to other jobs, found one, and started. Fast forward 10 weeks, it's the day Jimmy is supposed to return. He doesn't. For 2 days, they try calling him and even go to his house. He's nowhere to be found. Finally, on day 3, he calls and resigns, and they lose their crap. The parts he makes are specialized and patented by the original founder. You can't just hire someone off the street to make them. What eventually happened was they had to contract the original owner to come in and teach some new hires how to make them. And when he found out what they had all done, it really upset him. The last I heard, he charged them a 7-figure contract to teach them how to produce the parts, and they had to pony up or close down. Moral of the story, don't mess with people's vacation time. Edit. Jimmy made an electronic control module that was sealed and stayed fixed in a poured unit made of a 2-part epoxy. Edit 2. Jimmy didn't exactly miss out on a 7-figure contract and had zero chance to take one. He left, said forget it, and moved on. When they contacted the previous owner and explained the situation, it was basically a, "You need my help? It'll cost you $1 million" type of conversation. Fired for my hair. Restaurant had to close down. When I was in high school, I got a part-time job as a hostess at an Italian restaurant with a friend of mine. The restaurant was only open 5 days a week for dinner. The restaurant was fairly new, but was already filling every table every night because the food was amazing. In addition to my friend and I being the only 2 hostesses, the busboys were friends, half of the waiters were friends, and the dishwasher was a friend. The owner's son was the floor manager, and with the success of the restaurant, started to implement new changes. Everyone must look presentable and in uniform at all times. No dirty uniforms, even for the busboy. He was rather rude to all employees and would hover and take over our jobs right in front of customers, apologizing for our inability to do our jobs correctly. However, everyone there was fantastic at their jobs. The dishwasher even found creative ways to stay clean and tidy. The straw broke one night when my friend and I were both working the hostess stand on a packed Saturday night. The manager walked up to us and declared our hair was not compliant with dress code. Both of us had our hair pulled back in the requisite buns. However, we both had a few stray wisps. You know, those tiny little new hairs around your face. Never mind that it was August and it was hot, and we were all working as a team like crazy to make sure the night ran smoothly, sharing duties such as bussing tables and running food and drinks. He loudly fired both of us on the spot in front of the entire restaurant and front staff. He then said we were required to continue to work for 2 weeks and train our replacements. I asked, "Are we fired?" He said yes, and I said, "Fired means we don't work for you anymore." We walked out, punched our cards, and went to change out of our uniforms. When we got out of the dressing rooms, there was a line of people waiting to change, including the busboys, half the waitstaff, and the dishwasher. All were so mad about what had happened that they quit on the spot. No one liked the job anyway. We all went to IHOP to eat and were soon joined by the rest of the waitstaff and the line cooks. So all that was left of the entire restaurant staff was the bartender, the owner/cook, and the manager. I later heard that the owner just decided to shut down the restaurant because the only reason he started it was to provide his son a legacy from the family businesses in Italy, and he decided his son couldn't handle it. Speaking of restaurants, what's your favorite restaurant to eat at of all time? Please let us know.
I could really go for some Chili's right now. 2 for $20.
Guest thinks we made a mistake and is expecting compensation. I explained that what we did was part of our hotel policy. At 12 p.m., we send security to all of the departing rooms to let them know that it's checkout time. We have a deal with a third party that allows a 2 p.m. checkout for their VIP members. We still send security to these rooms because if they check out without informing us, we can send housekeeping to the room and not wait until 2 p.m. If the guest indicates that they will be using the 2 p.m., we don't go in the room until 2 p.m. If they don't mention it, we send security up at 12 to check if they will still be using it. I sent security to a room with that 2 p.m. checkout. Guest wasn't answering after 3 knocks, so security announced himself and peeked his head into the room. The guest then screamed for security to leave. Shortly after, the guest calls down in a very angry voice and says that security walked in on him while he was getting dressed. His tone of voice really bothered me. It was like a, "Gotcha," like he thought he would get compensated for this. The way he was talking was as if the hotel had done him over big time and he was about to get a comp stay or even more. He tells me to have a manager call him now. I hang up the phone, wait a few minutes, then I call him back. I explained to him that what we did is the hotel's policy and then explained why we do it. He disagreed with our policy and said it didn't make sense. I just pretended to sound concerned. Right, I see, okay. Then after he was done complaining, it got quiet. Then, him. Me. Was there any other question you had? Him.
Well, no, but I just disagree with the policy.
Me. I understand that, sir.
Like, he literally walked in on me while I was changing.
Me. He had knocked 3 times, but you didn't answer. He then announced himself before opening the door. Once it hits 12 p.m., our security staff has the right to enter the room.
I was in the bathroom. How can I hear a knock from the bathroom?
Well, he had told me that he didn't actually see you. He just heard you yell, so he closed the door. If you were in the bathroom, then how did he walk in on you? Him, stuttering for a minute. Then,
after I heard the door open, I stepped out of the bathroom.
Me. Well, sir, as I mentioned, he had knocked multiple times and had the right to enter the room at 12.
Okay, well, I don't think your policy is right. What's the point of 2 p.m. checkout if someone is still going to come to the door? Doesn't make sense.
Me. I'll definitely pass your dissatisfaction with our policy on to the manager. Him. Silence. Me. Did you have any other questions?
You know, I'm not expecting anything. I just need to know that my complaint is heard.
As I explained, I will be passing this on to a manager, so your complaint is heard.
Well, everyone just says they'll pass it on. How do I know something will actually come of this?
Me. Well, this is our hotel policy. I can't guarantee that we will change it, especially since this is the first complaint anyone has ever had on it. But like I said, I'll let a manager know.
I don't want you to give me anything free or anything like that, but you're not going to do anything for me?
If you aren't expecting any compensation, then what else can I really do for you other than pass your feedback on to a manager? Did you have something specific in mind? Him. Silence. Then,
so you're basically telling me you're not going to do anything for me?
Me. What I'm doing for you is giving a manager your feedback like you asked. As for compensation, we can't compensate someone just because they disagree with our policies. Him.
So basically, you're not going to do anything?
Me. That is correct. Hangs up. Edit. Just clarifying, the 2 p.m. checkout is not a paid perk. It's comped since they're a member of the third-party service. The guest didn't specifically pay to get a later checkout. Think about if you want to be employed here. Will do, boss. So this is from over a decade ago, but it's the only time I've ever quit a job and thought y'all might enjoy it. I worked for Target on their overnight team, 10 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. and eventually a specialist position came up, for which I applied and was granted. This was the position of receiver, scheduled to work 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., which basically was the person who would take in vendor orders, i.e., not things that were sent straight from corporate, but instead the Coca-Cola guy or the Lay's potato chip guy, etc., and specialty orders that came in at times other than the main truck. This was a job where instead of one major task, you dealt with about 20 minor ones throughout the day, and your day varied based on the whims of the people who are bringing things to you. We had a delivery cutoff of 12 p.m., but management would always say, just take things no matter when they came. I generally was really good about managing my time and making sure if I needed to stay late for something important, I did. And if it was something minor, say the romance books that could wait overnight to process, I'd get it first thing in the morning. I had a good rapport with my boss, and I got great reviews. Then my boss got a promotion, and my new boss was a real jerk. The new boss, we can call him John because that was his name, forget you, John, was a tyrant of the pettiest type. He'd wonder why things were left overnight when I wasn't busy earlier in the day when he saw me, because I'd completed all my tasks, and I can't make UPS come faster than they do. When Target's corporate told my department it was busy enough for a 20-hour-a-week worker, he refused to let me get anyone for longer than 30-minute lunch breaks. The straw that broke my back was P-Fresh. For those of you who didn't work at Target in the early 2000s, P-Fresh was what they called their new initiative to have groceries in the store. It was a big deal for them, and my store was one of the pilot stores in our area. I would be the first person to have to deal with this, and then I would have to teach receivers in the area how it works by having them shadow me for a day at my store, and me at theirs when they get their fresh food. The fresh food came in a separate truck that arrived at 4 a.m. I expected, like I was informed, I would simply have to process it first thing in the morning when I got to work. Instead, John decided that my schedule was going to be changed to 4 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Getting up at 3 a.m. to be at work at 4 a.m. was not fun, but I dealt with it because I was a team player. However, John still insisted I needed all of my work done by the time I left at 12:30 p.m., an impossibility when the cutoff for deliveries was 12 p.m. I still prioritized things as good as I could, and nothing urgent was left undone for more than 24 hours, when Target was pretty good at making sure we had plenty of time to receive things before they had to hit the floor for street dates and such. The straw that broke my back was when the specialist position was terminated. Basically, Target wanted those special positions in the normal chain of command, which is fine. However, when they did this, they also gave lots of power to John. You see, it was in my old position that I had weekends off, because people don't deliver on the weekends, and was not required to work holidays, along with being a guaranteed 40-hour-a-week Monday through Friday position. When this change came through, HR informed us that we had a week to decide whether we wanted the position or if we wanted to go to another position in the company, or if we wanted severance. HR informed me that nothing would really be changing with my job because it was still important, whereas other jobs like the jewelry counter weren't considered as important and were being rolled in with other things. I was going to stay with the position until John brought me into his office later that day. He told me he was tired of my poor attitude involving getting things done, so he was changing my schedule to a split shift. Basically, he wanted me to come in from 4 to 5 a.m., then go home for an hour, then come back at 6 a.m. and work until 1:30 p.m. He also told me that any overtime would no longer be allowed, and that I'd have to start working 1 weekend a month and holidays. He also wrote me up for something that I did not do, but the person who covered my lunches did, under the guise of me not training them properly. His words were, "You need to think long and hard about how you are working, and think about if you want to be employed here in a month." I told him he was absolutely right. I told him I would be right back. I had to run to the restroom. Instead, I went to HR and told them I'm taking the severance, and as it was 12:25 p.m., I'm guessing this is my last day. I then got to go back to John and tell him what I just said. He told me that I had to come back next week to train my replacement. I walked out of that building happier than I had been in the last 3 years working there. I got texts over the next few months of the fallout. The receiving department was a nightmare for months, and since I was the only one who knew how to handle their refrigerated trucks, they lost an entire truck's worth of merchandise that week. That was not a good look for them. Additionally, corporate had to send out people from out of the area to cover all of the training I was supposed to provide, which cost them a lot of money and made corporate even more upset with John. Last I heard, he had been let go, and the next place he worked fired him for harassment. I had a month's vacation where I got totally prepared for WoW Cataclysm, and then I took a new job. I was happy as a clam. Am I the jerk for exposing the real reason why my cousins weren't invited to my wedding? This incident started about 4 years ago, but a recent post reminded me of it. A lot of my family had my back, but I don't trust their judgment on a number of things. Background: my 3 cousins, males, 14, 16, and 17 at the time, had a phase where they wanted to be famous YouTube pranksters. They thought they would achieve stardom by posting some really mean-spirited prank videos. I didn't find out about this until later, but several of their pranks targeted my then-girlfriend, now wife, Esther. One of which was swapping out my wife's fakin' bits with actual bacon, then secretly recording her as she ate salad with the real bacon bits. Esther doesn't eat pork for religious reasons. Their sister showed this video to us. Our reaction to the video was so visceral, we seriously considered pressing charges on my cousins. In the end, we didn't, but we cut off contact with my 3 cousins and their mother, my dad's sister, who acted like it was no big deal. The cousins never apologized for what they did. A few years later, and Esther and I are getting married. We sent out invitations around October of 2019. Middle cousin made a post on Facebook calling me out for excluding his family and asking where their invites are. Then he called my wife and I names for disinviting them because he's gay. That's literally how I found out he was. I had no idea beforehand. Good for him, but that doesn't excuse him for what he and his brothers did. Most of his followers who responded agreed with him and demanded that we invite his family. I felt like I had no choice at the time. I wrote a comment saying something on the lines of, "The reason why you, cousin 1 and 2, and aunt weren't invited was because you turned my wife-to-be into the butt of your immature prank videos and tricked her into eating something her faith bans." Their sister backed me up and shared the video. According to a post middle cousin later made, he got fired from his volunteer job at a teen helpline and had another job offer pulled because the higher-ups saw the video. Something similar also happened to his brothers. Their sister confirmed it. As far as I know, they're unemployed and living with their mom. I don't know which part upsets me more, my cousins bullying my wife or lying about it to cover their own tracks at our expense. Most of my family backs Esther and I, but I don't trust their judgment because they have their own reasons to be mad at my aunt and her family. Those guys are in their 20s now and act like the videos were no big deal while blaming Esther, me, and their sister for ruining their lives. Their mom is no help either. Am I the jerk for setting the record straight and telling everyone the real reason why my cousins weren't invited to my wedding? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his cousins? Please let us know.
Pro tip: anyone who tries to start drama with you on Facebook shouldn't be part of your life.
It's not 9 a.m. yet. I worked for a small startup for the first few years of my career. My boss, the CEO, seemed to be still grasping object permanence, as he had a hard time wrapping his head around people working where he could not physically see them doing so. But he was getting better over time. Business hours were 9 to 6, but all of our work could be done from home, and we had an office in Australia that some people communicated directly with, and tight release schedules sometimes meant long nights followed by late starts. So the informal policy tended to be as long as you were in the office by 10 and not leaving before 5, you didn't need to explain yourself, and anything beyond that was fine as long as you gave someone a heads up, especially if you were managed by the CEO, who was too busy to pay close attention to people's exact arrivals and departures, and frequently away from the office himself, speaking at various events. Enter our new VP, a 30-something milquetoast MBA type. Unlike the CEO, he was not too busy to pay attention to arrivals and departures, and told the CEO that obviously the lazy employees were taking advantage. The CEO, who again was sort of inclined this direction himself, sends out an email one Friday saying that from this point forward, people needed to be in the office every day by 9 and they needed permission from their manager to leave before 6. Everyone was upset, but there was no real sense of long-term concern. This wasn't the first arbitrary rule that had been handed down in this fashion, and it tended to be easiest to play along for a week or two until the CEO had moved on to the next thing and then just ignored the rule. But the next Monday, when I showed up at 8:50, 2 of my coworkers were sitting on the stairs to the unoccupied next floor, just talking and playing Candy Crush. What are you doing? It's not 9 a.m. yet. I sat down with them, and soon someone else arrived, and the same conversation played out. At 8:59, we all got up and walked into the office. On Tuesday, there were half a dozen people on the stairs, including leadership, chatting and texting and whatever. And when the VP arrived, people would just make hard eye contact while he squirmed. Meanwhile, myself and a few other people just said forget it and arrived after 9 a.m. anyway, looking the VP straight in the eye as we walked in. A few people who were a little more conflict averse would stop for coffee across the street and just so happened to arrive at like 9:02, including people who normally preferred to start at 7 a.m. All of this meant that rather than being about half full, the office was virtually empty until 9. The end result of all of this was that the office was virtually empty until exactly 9 a.m. and tended to clear out at exactly 6 p.m. Several people, including myself, simply stopped responding to anything outside work hours. One of my favorite coworkers also made a show of announcing to her contacts in the Australia office that she could now only meet between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. their time. Calamity ensued. The funny thing is that we never really talked about it before or during. It just sort of happened naturally. The CEO, who had been barely at the office on Monday/Tuesday, finally showed up early on Wednesday, asked why everyone was outside, and we told him. He opened his mouth to protest that no, that wasn't what he meant, realized what was happening, and made a strategic retreat. The policy was formally retracted 2 days later, we never discussed it again, and it was the beginning of a very messy fall from grace for the VP. I may be a jerk, but you are still paying for that stain. I think I either need a vacation or a short break from humanity. I'm an FDM at an independent. From time to time, I'll work an AM shift just to keep me grounded and also see if we need to make any policy or procedure changes to make things easier for the staff. I get a call while working the AM shift this past weekend. Guest.
Hi, I just wanted to let you know I'm checking out soon and that there's some red sticky stuff on the carpet between the beds, but that was there when we checked in.
Me. Oh, I'm very sorry to hear that. Did you have the opportunity to call the front desk to let them know of this?
No, but we just put one of the pool towels over it.
Me. I see. Well, I'm sorry to hear about the carpet. However, without letting us know when you checked in that there was a problem, we will have to post damages, as well as the pool policy form you signed did indicate to not remove our pool towels from the pool area.
But we didn't do it.
Me. I understand what you're saying, ma'am, but all of our rooms are double inspected before we release them into inventory, and we would have blocked it for shampooing. I'm one of the people who double-checked that room.
Well, I work in hospitality, and it's not our fault, and I can bring up all of us there to let you know what we saw.
Me. Ma'am, again, I understand what you are saying. I don't appreciate you threatening to have 12 people, 3 different rooms, come and confront me about this situation. Working in hospitality, then you most certainly understand how inspections work. Yes, I understand hospitality is broad and not always hotel-related, but don't go throwing hands if you can't back them.
You need to put your manager on the phone.
Me. I am the front desk manager, ma'am, and your cards will be charged in accordance with our policy and the document you signed upon check-in. This is the final decision and will not be reversed. My GM always backs me, thankfully. Guest.
You're a jerk.
Me. Thank you. Yes, I am, ma'am. You enjoy your day. I'm the hyper-vigilant one when it comes to room checks. So if there was anything on that carpet, it would have been shampooed within minutes and sold last to let it dry. Or we'd block it for the night. Either way, there was nothing on the carpet, and with all those darn kids with them, I know pop or juice would have been spilled. If she had called the desk right away and let them know there was a spill, there would have been no damage posted because I appreciate honest people and accidents do happen. But to lie and then call me a jerk? Oh honey, I have earned that jerk title and wear that crown proudly. Entitled mom tries to get me to spend more money on her kid. I'm a daycare teacher, 4 to 5-year-olds. I love my job. It fulfills me and it makes my life worth living. Once a month we do parties. Most teachers just watch a movie. I love to do themes. I love making decorations, photo props, games that fit into the theme. It can add up quickly, but I budget, and the way I see it, if I need to eat rice and beans a few nights a week to be able to afford it, so be it. As I said, I love my job and my students. I'm happy to do it for them. Graduation is this month, my boss's idea, not mine. And a part of this is the teachers need to take 7 to 8 specific pictures for their books. I decided to do something meaningful for them instead of a party. I got graduation announcements from Walmart, 2 for each kid, in case of parents are separated. Grandparents, the parents wanted one for family keepsake, whatever. I got them printed, 34 in total, put them in envelopes, added a note to the kid. I was feeling really good about it until I had this interaction with an entitled mom.
Hey, so my husband brought home the announcements and they are so cute.
Me, I'm so glad you like them. I think they turned out good.
So, when can we expect the rest?
Me, starting to panic. Oh, did you not get 2?
No, we did, but that's not enough.
Me, oh, sorry, that's all I can afford right now. But I'm happy to text or email you the copies and the template I used.
No? I want more.
I had a family emergency earlier this month. I wish I could afford more, but I just can't.
Can't you take out of your party fund? I need 18 more.
Me, I don't get a fund. I buy all of this myself. That's all I can give. I'm so happy to do it for you, so please don't think I'm not.
Then, I guess I will have to go to your manager.
And she did. I'm glad my boss didn't cave, but the family did drop because of this. The time Mr. and Mrs. Karen came to stay for a week. So this happened when I was about 13. My dad invited his childhood friend and his wife to stay with us for a week. It was a disaster and we have not seen them since. So the entitlement started a week before they were set to arrive. We were informed that the Karens would be bringing their dog. They also told us their dog must be part beaver because it chews on trees and stuff, and they were sure that wouldn't be an issue. Right. Dad said they could not bring the dog, which upset them, but they agreed in the end after my dad offered to pay for puppy boarding. The second event was much more minor, but was the first one that affected me. My parents were not thrilled with video games because of how much I liked to play them, so they kept the Xbox 360 in the guest room, so of course I would not be able to play. This upset me because I had just bought Forza and was excited to start playing it. Well, the second day, Mr. Karen told me that he was really enjoying playing Forza. I hadn't even taken it out of the plastic it came in. I was upset, but in reality, this was not a big deal. I found out years later that the Karens had gotten into my parents' nice wine as well, like $200 to $1,000 bottles. My parents did not drink at the time, but my mom was an executive at our hospital and was always given nice wine. She usually regifted it. The final day they were here, we took them to our favorite Mexican restaurant. We came here every week and were very well known for my father's excessive tipping. Well, this was the one and only time that I can remember that our food was messed up. Basically, the restaurant forgot our order and it sat for a while and got cold. Not a huge deal, but obviously the Karens had to go off the deep end. After we pointed out that the food was cold, the kitchen offered to remake it. This did not satisfy the Karens. They wanted the meal to be remade and they wanted it for free. Now, I'm not sure how everyone else views this kind of stuff, but I was raised to believe that either you get refunded or you get your meal remade, but not both. Now my dad reminded Mr. Karen that this meal was his treat and that remaking the meal was more than enough. Mr. Karen would not let it go, and eventually a manager offered to comp the remade meals, which we had at this point. Being a Karen, that was not enough, and somehow Mr. Karen got breakfast buffet vouchers thrown in as well. They were leaving the next day, so they wouldn't get a chance to use it, so I don't know why he demanded it. Being a kid, I wasn't paying a ton of attention and was happy that I got 2 meals. I was hungry and ate my cold burrito while the adults were arguing and was still brought a new one. My dad was beyond embarrassed as we knew the staff very well. My dad ended up paying for the meals, both the originals and the remakes. He's generous and stubborn beyond belief. He was not about to not let him pay, and left an unbelievable tip for having to deal with this while Mr. and Mrs. Karen were not paying attention. My parents were really nervous to go back because of how poorly the people my dad introduced as his friends treated the staff. Staff were cool about it though, and we never brought people we were not 100% sure about to that restaurant again. I have not seen the Karens since.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.